Thank you. All right, if you're just joining us, welcome. We had a little Zoom scare. We thought we were not live broadcasting, but we are. And so I'm just going to give everyone a minute or two to be able to get settled in. For those attendees who are here, if you would like to raise your hand digitally for item number 3, which is oral communications. This is for items not on the agenda. Now is a great time to raise your hand so that I have a sense of how many speakers we're going to have. And in the meantime, we will just say hello to Greg and hello to Larry, hello to Carrie, hello to Tony. Phil Burton is asking if someone could resend him the meeting link. He's unable to get on.
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you. And I'm getting confirmation from a member of the audience that we are already broadcasting. So thank you for that. There's usually an orange bar that lets Sarah know, and we didn't see that. So there was a moment of brief freak out. Okay. I see In Young.
Hi.
Hello. Happy sunshine. All right. And I think, Sarah, you could probably take the roll and then we can move on to staff updates while everyone's coming in.
And let me go ahead and resend to Phil. That's done. Okay. Okay, roll call. Gregory Braille.
I'm here.
Phil Burton is coming. Tony Carrasco.
Here.
In Young Cho.
Here.
Larry Klein.
Here.
Nadia Nayak.
Here.
Keith Reckdahl.
You should be coming.
David Shen.
Here.
Carrie Templeton.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So we'll just call out Phil and Keith when they get here so everyone knows for the record. Awesome. Okay, I think we're going to start with staff updates. Staff, do we have an update on the town hall, or is there anything else that you could tell us about?
Sure, I can give a brief update on the town hall here, I guess, looking from the town hall. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Apologies, I'm having a little bit of internet issues today, but I'm glad you can hear me right now. Don't have full data yet from the virtual town hall that ended this past Monday, but I can tell you that unfortunately the town hall wasn't able to collect data for the first 6 days that it was up. But that said, following the first 6 days, the town hall received over 1,000 unique visitors, actually 1,006 unique visitors, and we received over 600 feedback forms, individual feedback forms. We know at a minimum we had 60 visitors during that first 6 days, but I suspect it was significantly higher than that. So pretty
Phil, just to clarify, the first 6 days you couldn't count how many visitors, but if they gave a feedback form, you were able to receive those. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we know that we had a minimum of 60 visitors during that time based on feedback forms and videos that were watched and stuff like that, but it's likely much higher than that. But then again, we also don't know how many people were unique visitors, you know, that didn't come back after that. So we know it was over 1,000 during the time. So as a measurement, I'd say that was by far our most successful town hall in getting visitors to attend. Also note it was up for nearly 4 weeks, so a little bit different. Obviously not an apples to apple comparison, but we got some really, really good feedback and quite a lot of questions and comments. And I'll look forward to sharing that with you as soon as we pull it all together. But the response looks like it was spread out through all of Palo Alto. So we received feedback from most neighborhoods and really got a nice little last minute push in the last few days that it was up. The virtual town hall itself is still up. So people can still continue to visit it. I don't know how long we're going to be able to keep it up for, but we're going to try and leave it up for as long as possible. But the feedback tools are no longer available there. So if you'd like to continue to provide feedback, please feel free to do so as you normally would if the town hall were not up and running. You can email transportation, provide comments here to the XCAP or to the city council. So with that, anything you want to add to that, Ripon?
If we can also let on the whole XCAP, the whole committee know that the XCAP update report is scheduled at 5:45 on September 21st for the city council report update by the chair and the co-chair.
Great. And are you expecting to give a summary of the feedback at the city council meeting on Monday?
I don't think so, unless we have that together, because we're preparing kind of a full report back, and I don't think it's going to be ready by that time.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm not sure. We might, if possible, might just share how many visitors we had, but the full report would be coming back at a later time.
Okay. And do we have any sense for when that might be? Like a week from now, a month from now, a year from now?
I suspect it'll be sometime next week, actually. So I think the timing's just not going to line up. But it's also a question of how many unanswered questions and all of that we still need to sort through.
Okay, great.
I think that it would be useful, if you can do it, to show how many people from each neighborhood responded.
Yeah, we have that. So we do have that. I would share it right now. I have a snapshot of it on my cell phone, so I unfortunately can't. But we only had 220 respondents say what neighborhood they were coming from, although we obviously have a lot more information about, people that were using computers in Palo Alto. But yeah, so we do have 220, approximately 220 responses that said what neighborhood they were coming from.
So out of 1,000, that's not so many.
Well, out of 600 feedback forms.
Oh,
So,
gotcha. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And I just want to acknowledge that Keith has joined us. Hi, Keith.
Hello.
And we have Phil, who hopefully is finding the link and will be joining us soon. Okay, is there any other staff updates that we're missing or that we're supposed to hear from? I don't think so, but.
No, I think that's it.
Okay, great. So with that, we will move to oral communications. So this is a chance for members of the public to discuss anything that will not be on the agenda for today. And I see that we've got 4 hands raised so far. I will just turn it over. Let's see, Elizabeth and Chirag are helping me today. So I will turn it over to you guys, and the public speakers can have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Nadia. As you said, we have 4 people with raised hands today. The first speaker is Yuriko Kishimoto, followed by Kathy Jordan. Yuriko, go ahead, and it's your turn to speak, so go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you. Start speaking. Yuriko? We'll go ahead and move on with Kathy Jordan. Kathy, please unmute yourself. You may begin to speak.
Kathy Jordan, it's your turn to speak if you could unmute yourself.
I think we should go ahead and move on to our next speaker, Carrie.
I'm wondering if we're having some kind of other audio issues because it's unusual for them not to be able to speak.
I'm not seeing the, I typically think I see them like the thing where they show as being muted pop up on the callers when they're able to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah, let's try that again with Yuriko again, just a moment. Yuriko, go ahead and unmute yourself. You can start to talk.
Okay. Hi.
This is Yoriko, and yes, I wasn't able to unmute myself earlier. So yes, I just wanted to call your attention to 2 letters I sent to XCAP and the City Council. So I hope you take the time to read through them. And the most recent one I sent today is a report that we commissioned to Dr. Di Robertis. She's a PhD and she's a licensed traffic and civil engineer. And we asked her to review the traffic report. That's the basis of your recommendations. And they do call out a number of notable omissions. So one is that it fails to analyze the capacity of the Embarcadero Road underpass. It looks only at out 10 years, which is very low for a major transportation study. And it is an old-fashioned traffic study, which only looks at automotive traffic in only intersections. And importantly, it omits looking at the LOS and operating conditions for the proposed new signalized intersection at Embarcadero and Kingsley. So they don't have it for automobiles or pedestrians or bicyclists. And then, sorry, it also points out that a lot of the minor mitigations that are postponed to be analyzed, that it is likely that these impacts of the mitigation itself cannot be mitigated. And that we recommend more clarity on what exactly the impacts are before an alternative is selected. And then I did attach an article that I really highly recommend that both staff and XCAP review, which is an excellent article on really the difference between, kind of shoehorning in bike ped access after you've worked out all the automotive directions and not doing it the correct way, which is really doing it in a really truly integrated way where bike ped, has at least as high a priority.
Yoriko, your time is up. We will need to move on to our next speaker, Kathy Jordan. Thank you. Go ahead, Kathy, then mute yourself. You can begin speaking.
Yes, thank you. There was a problem before. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I wanted to speak about the process of deliberation. Uh-oh.
Kathy,
that-
oh, there you are.
Okay,
Can we
sorry.
restart Kathy's time for her? Yeah, thanks.
Okay, maybe you didn't hear anything. Okay, so I wanted to speak to the process of deliberations itself, which, many of us think that is premature at this point in time, considering, the phase change that has taken place, remote work, the public's concern about the health and safety of public transportation use, the pausing of Caltrain's business plan, the plan for Caltrain itself to be doing a study on grade separation, the uncertainty moving forward of whether these changes will stick, not stick, whether traffic will increase back, whether Caltrain will be able to increase its rail traffic or not, whether sales taxes will pass, whether business taxes will pass, whether infrastructure plans on the federal level will pass. It seems premature to have this process of deliberation when I think we've seen so much that is in flux currently. And I would ask that the XCAP, though I'm sure they wish to finish their work and deliberations after so much time and so much effort put into it, to consider that perhaps it's best to pass on all the information that has been learned. But given that all the assumptions underneath the charge XCAP was given are now, circumstances have changed, consider whether this process of deliberation is not premature. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Our next speaker is Carrie Wagner. Carrie, yourself and you may begin speaking.
Hello, thank you. So I'd like to talk to the general engineering plans. Several times in the town hall, it mentions that the bike and pedestrian crossings aren't fleshed out because it's premature in the engineering. And just like Yorika said earlier, I really disagree with that. We have a high number of people who bike and walk, and especially with students. And I just don't think we can throw that in after we've taken care of the cars. And to that point, one of the Churchill mitigations right away was an underpass, which is great, but there will then be 5 underpasses in North Palo Alto. Whereas in South Palo Alto, we have approved, the traffic plan was adopted, the bike pedestrian traffic plan adopted in July 2012 proposed a undercrossing at Matadero Creek. That has never been given any attention, and I'd really like to consider that as a mitigation for whatever plans we come up with. We need that underpass in South Palo Alto. And again, thank you. I hope you consider this, and I appreciate all the work you guys have done on XCAP. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie. Our next speaker is Ellen Hartog. Ellen, go ahead and unmute.
Unmute. Hello. Yes, thank you for taking the time. I do appreciate everything you've done all year during this whole pandemic. Amazing work. But I do want to bring up the fact that we are proposing 2 below grade underpasses within a block of each other and close Churchill. I just don't understand that thinking. The time for construction will be doubled, and for Charleston Meadows, it will ruin our connectivity as well. I am in Charleston Meadows. My concern is that, our whole neighborhood will be destroyed. Wilkie Way will be used as a cut through because there is no turn lane for left turning onto Alma from Charleston. So they'll cut over to West Meadow to make that left turn. That's obvious no-brainer type of shortcut. And that would be for commuters. And it's a very walkable, would have been a very walkable street. It is the bike path to Mountain View as well. And it's just, it's an accident waiting to happen. It already is with squirrels that, get hit by cars today. I think, quieting traffic methods are not being encouraged with these type of underpasses. Bikes will be going at a super high speed. How are people walking going to be treated? With the same way California Avenue is, which is a very dangerous situation when you're going very fast and the bars are right there. And then it's single file. So I don't think it's been thought out. Traffic hasn't been thought out as to, what people are really.
Thank you, Ellen.
Your time is up. We have 3 more raised hands at this point. The next speaker is Susan Newman, and then followed by Ken Joy.
That's fine. And then Fred Coleman will be our last speaker. I did also want to acknowledge that Phil Burton has joined us. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'd like to just comment on last week's discussion of mitigations related to Churchill closure and raise a question. I left that meeting wanting a lot more clarity about how the mitigations will be treated in your recommendations to council, your recommendation to council. There did not seem to be a shared understanding even within XCAP about the current mitigation plan. For example, in a discussion sort of back and forth between Nadia and Carrie about the language to use about the mitigations, Carrie said that the current mitigation plan is not baseline, but falls below our whoever our is, minimum standards, and others below our minimum standards, and needs to be really rethought almost completely, it sounded like. And others also seem to feel that the mitigations needed to be deeply reconsidered. And my question is, I'd like more understanding of how you intend to sort of talk about this in your report to council, and just also wonder how, with such a lack of clarity about what needs to happen to make Churchill closure feasible, you could go ahead and recommend it. So that's it. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Susan. Our next speaker is Ken Joy. Ken, please unmute yourself and you may begin speaking.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to echo what two of the speakers have said earlier, namely the traffic report is deficient in addressing bicycle boulevards. Former Mayor Kishimoto talked about an analysis of that. I recently raised a question about Wilkie Way, as the other previous speaker mentioned. There was some comment at a previous XCAP meeting about Wilkie Way, but I note that the traffic report has not been updated. I'd like to suggest that when you make your recommendations, you particularly highlight the fact that anything you do has to take into account the bike network in Palo Alto. Park Castellea is a designated bicycle boulevard on which bicycles should be given priority traffic. So proposed mitigations affecting bicycles need to be done very carefully. I'm sure you appreciate that. I just want to highlight that note. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken Joy. Our last speaker is Fred Coleman. Fred, go ahead and unmute yourself and you may start speaking.
Thank you. Hi, I live in Southgate. I just wanted to comment briefly on the plan to close Churchill, which I understand there has been a vote to do so. I wanted to comment briefly on the impact on our neighborhood. One of the lovely things about Southgate is it's a small little community, but we are part of Palo Alto, and to close Churchill will completely isolate us. Instead of being part of Palo Alto, we are now literally on the other side of the tracks, which is detrimental to our quality of life. It's also detrimental to the value of our homes. And it also makes it more difficult for police, fire, ambulance, all of those services to get to us. I know that they can obviously come in from the other side, but it certainly decreases that. So personally, I think that closing Churchill is a terrible idea. I think that the underpass was a reasonable compromise. Actually, I don't believe that any of it is really necessary for 20 hours of the day. Even with all of the extra trains, it won't be any worse than rush hour is today. So the real concern is only rush hour. And I do believe that if we use computerization so that the traffic lights knew when the trains were coming, we could mitigate the problem and allow traffic to continue through. So I really think there's a inexpensive way to resolve this problem without any major changes. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. That concludes the speakers for item number 3.
Thank you. I did want to raise, so this is a conversation I had offline with staff, and one of the members, one of the speakers brought this up, and that is the discussion about they called it the Matadero Creek crossing, but it's really the Loma Verde bike crossing. Philip and Ripon and Larry and I have actually discussed that. So it was suggested, I think in 2012, it was part of the rail corridor plan in 2014. The council actually in 2019 took a vote to remove, when the cap started, meaning the before XCAP, it used to be Meadow, Charleston, and a crossing at Loma Verde. They were all 3 were being considered together. And what happened is the council made a decision to move the Loma Verde bike path into the discussion related to the NVCAP, which is the North Ventura Coordinated Area Plan, also known as the Fry's site. And the reason was the proximity to that project. That is the last I sort of heard of it. We have Keith Rechtel, who's part of NVCAP, and then we have city staff. And in checking in with them, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but apparently they've been focused a lot on housing issues. There hasn't really been much discussion at all related to those to that crossing. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, from my memory, I don't remember it being brought up. Ken Joy did mention that he had heard it mentioned one time, but I don't remember that. But in any case, we have not given any attention to it. It may have come up in passing, but we have not done any work on that. It's all been housing stuff.
Okay. All right. So I want to just note that for the record. I plan on talking about it when we start to talk about South Palo Alto. So I just want to make sure that I think it was Carrie Wagner who brought it up, and she brought it up at the last meeting as well, that I hear you. We officially, City Council officially had put that into the NVCAP process. It may need to come back to XCAPs because I'm not sure where NVCAP is really dealing with it or if they are, but I did want to make sure and acknowledge that we did hear that. Okay. With that, we can move to item number 4, which is member updates and working group updates. We have I wrote a memo, or actually, I think we put Larry's name on it, but it's a memo for the XCAP to see whose sections have been turned in and which ones have been uploaded today. So hopefully XCAPers know what to do. The idea is that we turn in edits to Sarah, and we have until Friday, 9/18 at 10 a.m. So all XCAPers, you basically have 2 more days less to kind of give any edits to the chapters that have been put out so far. Full disclosure, I am going to wait on my edits because Larry and I are responsible for putting all of them together. So I'm going to kind of take chair's prerogative and do it then, because I think it'll be easier for me to kind of read them all at once and collate those. I'm not sure how we're sort of going to resolve all the edits, but we will keep track of them all. So stay tuned on that. Larry and I have a lot of rolling up our sleeves and some work to do here on that. Is there anybody from XCAP that has a question about their chapter or what's going on with that, or did they turn it in? Did they not? Yep, Phil, I see your hand.
Okay,
raised.
so I want to mention that I got some email feedback on the chapters I've been working on. I haven't had a chance to respond. I will do my best to update chapter 1 prior to Friday. Chapter 4 is going to take me considerably longer than I even anticipated. I just want to be clear on that.
That's okay. That one's a work in progress because, as we discussed, it's probably a melding of chapter 4 and the chapter that Larry and I are doing, which is chapter 5. So
yeah, so
okay.
I'm going to I had an excellent suggestion by email, which was precisely why at the last meeting I asked for community input. It's an excellent suggestion, but it's going to probably add at least 1, possibly 2 extra days just to get the work done. But I think the final work product will be much better as a result. But it just takes the time to do the work. Also, Nadia, at the last meeting, I wanted to make a general comment, but we ran out of time.
Yeah.
What's the appropriate time to make that comment?
Now would be fine. Yeah.
Okay. So what I would like to speak to is the whole issue of the future of the Caltrain business plan and the work of the XCAP. So the first thing I've got 5 points I want to make. First is this is a long-term project. The detailed design will take a year or more, and then there are environmental reviews. If we wait till everything is fully clear, we will have missed a lot of design windows, and we might be very, very late in finally getting our project done after years of inconvenience that might have been avoided. Second, the U.S. economic history is very informative here. This country has endured much worse downturns than the one we have now. We had the Great Depression. We had various financial panics in the 19th century, and the country has always recovered in some fashion. Not necessarily exactly the way it was before, because the country is also evolving long-term in response to technology and business trends. But if downturns were permanent, then the U.S. economy today will be almost non-existent. Now, we know that's clearly not the case. And that has to apply to the Caltrain business plan. So third point I want to make, and I'm speaking here with a career in high-tech software, is that there are a lot of technology trends that companies embrace as sort of fast technology fixes. And the latest one is work from home. And there's even a technology consultancy that the people who are listening to me who know about IT will recognize the name of the company, Gartner Group. They are the premier IT consultancy for companies. They have a term called hype cycle. And they talk about trends that get way overhyped beyond all reality. And right now, working from home is one of those hype cycles. Now, inevitably, after a trend gets hyped to the peak, it goes into what's called the trough of disillusionment before finally there is some benefit. Now, I need to be clear that companies, not individual employees, are the beneficiaries of work from home, because they will therefore cut the salaries of employees who are no longer working in the Bay
So
Area.
Phil,
That's-
sorry to interrupt you. Are you proposing to put all these into the report, or?
Not necessarily. I just want everybody to understand this in terms of some of the comments we're getting. So employees will be a lot less happy once they discover they're going to get their salaries reduced. So given that the basic economic drivers of the Bay Area are still in place, ridership will return, although it may return several years later than Caltrain anticipated. Therefore, we are still reasonable within the limit of forecast precision to proceed on this path. That's what I had to say. And this is a strong message deliberately to people who are glooming and dooming and saying the sky is falling and chicken littling this whole issue. Thank you. And I'll stand by what I've said.
Thank you, Phil.
What Phil has said is in his draft of chapter 1.
Okay.
But I might reinforce it if necessary.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm happy to discuss this with anybody who disagrees with me.
All right.
And yes, I'm taking a position because I feel it's absolutely necessary at this point.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll resume our regular meeting.
Does anybody else have something that they want to talk about in terms of their chapters, or any questions that we missed? Yeah, Greg.
Would you like us to send comments directly to the author, or?
No, you should send them. So the way this has to work is it all has to go through poor Sarah. So you
So
know, Sarah will-
so I send them to Sarah. Okay.
Yeah, and no need to
Okay.
copy me, because I'd rather just get them all bundled from Sarah.
Okay, because you
quite
get enough
honestly.
emails already. If I've
Yeah.
seen the emails that I get. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I have a few specific comments on Phil's thing, but not related to what he just said.
All right, then
other
just
stuff. Yeah. I'll
just
email
email
the
the thing and be happy to work on them. I really
Okay.
welcome those comments.
I
Well,
know.
and so question, I think the best thing would be for folks, I'm realizing, Sarah, the copies that we put out are all PDFs, right? So I'm wondering if there's a place where we could put soft copies so that folks can do their edits in track changes mode. How do we do that? It's already been made public. So question about can you email XCAP members the same thing, but in soft copies so that everybody has that version?
I'm not sure. And this is something that hasn't happened yet, right? I have not gotten XCAP members emailing me their individual comments about each other's chapters.
Right, but I'm saying even to give us, I just realizing that we posted these chapters, right, and they're PDF versions. So in order for me to go, let's say I was a good XCAPper, I did my homework already, and I want to send in my comments about Greg Brails. I wouldn't be able to do it because it's a PDF form. And so a question about how do we make sure there's a Word copy that gets dispersed so that XCAPers can use that to then send you back their comments. Could we could probably talk offline about this, but maybe we just send an email with the soft copies, because it's the same as what's already been, the important thing is that the public sees the same version that was already put out, which we did with this agenda. We just need to give XCAPers a soft copy so that they can do everything in track changes mode. And this is a big plea, please, please, please use track changes mode. It'll make mine and Larry's life much easier.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, Nadia, I'd like to say one thing. If we do put it out in soft copy, that we manage that people have the ability to copy, but not to actually delete or rewrite content, only to suggest changes.
Sure. I don't know really how to do that. I'm just proposing that everyone, when they go into track changes mode, do suggest edits. And then everybody just needs to make sure they're in suggest edits mode and then go from there. It shouldn't delete anything. It'll make everything redlined on the side. And then I believe there's actually the feature that I'm hoping to use with Larry is there's a compare documents mode where it then takes everybody's comments and puts them together.
You know, unless it's a lot better than Google Docs and in Microsoft Word, it's really cumbersome and hard to work with.
But welcome to my new problem.
Yeah, it's been my old problem.
I have not been looking forward to this month, despite the fact that it is my birthday month.
I hate compare docs in Microsoft Word. Hate that feature.
Okay, so we can talk offline, but I think, Sarah, that'll make all of our lives easier. So if we can get soft copies out.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? Nope, everybody's good. Okay. All right, I think we can move to item 5, which is continued deliberations on Churchill. We have finished deliberations. You can tell we're being hopeful here. And so this is a continued item. So we have taken public comment on this previously. We will take any public comment from people we have not heard from. So if we've heard from you already, this is not the time for you to speak. You can always email us your comments. But during oral communications, we're trying to leave this one for folks who've not had a chance to speak during this time. And we do have a running list of who've spoken. So Elizabeth and Chirag, well, actually Elizabeth is doing the monitoring today, so she'll be helping us with that. And each of the speakers on the Churchill deliberations right now can have 3 minutes. And I see 2 hands raised. I don't know that either of them have spoken. I know they've spoken multiple times, but I don't know that they've spoken on this Churchill issue. So.
Okay, our first speaker is Arnott Roland, and followed by Ken Joy. Arnott, please go ahead and unmute yourself, and you may begin speaking.
Thank you very much. Yes, again, I'd like to thank XCAP for all the work they're doing and for the vote they took to close Churchill. I think that's great for safe routes to the Pali High School. The feedback I would like to give on Churchill that, and I wrote an email about this as well, with design principles for cycling infrastructure, that I think option 2 is by far the best option, because you don't have to cross Alma with extra traffic lights and extra risk of collisions between pedestrians, cyclists and cars. And it offers a straight shot under Alma and the train tracks. So it's much easier to navigate for young people, old people, people on cargo bikes, and it will give people a much greater sense of safety, because they can see through the tunnel and there's no one unexpectedly riding around the corner, which is especially important for the kids, because there will be a large number of them and they need to be able to see where they're going. Yeah, that's my feedback. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Arnott. Our next speaker is Ken Joy. Ken, go ahead and unmute yourself. You may begin speaking.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the alternatives for Churchill. Like Arnott, I'm a member of the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee, and over the years we've looked many times at the crossing of Churchill and are quite aware of the behavior of the high school students. Of course, those are not the only people who would cross there. There are many members of the community who, for example, wish to go from the bay side of the tracks to Town and Country Shopping Center. So it's a complicated thing. I completely understand the comments that David Shen made about velocity within the tunnel. But like Arnott, I believe that the sight lines are the most important safety factor, far outweighing the problem of bicyclist speed. And I think everyone would be safer in the tunnel if they could go directly without making that U-turn. I acknowledge that it's going to be complicated to have the tunnel arise on the bay side of Alma, but I think having option 2 is by far the best choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Our next speaker is Dexter Curtin, and I believe that for the time being is the last speaker. Dexter, please go ahead and unmute yourself. You may begin speaking. Thank you.
Hi, I live right at the corner of High Street and Embarcadero Road. My message here is about traffic jams that occurred on Embarcadero Road before COVID and what to expect when traffic returns to pre-COVID levels. This relates to westbound traffic headed to El Camino. Before the shelter-in-place order due to COVID, traffic jams occurred almost every day at the 2 peak times right in front of our house at Embarcadero Street and at High Street and Embarcadero Road. And they often extended beyond our house toward the bay. Many of these lasted more than 5 minutes, as seen from our house. I watched many days from our window And one day I went out and took photos, which I sent in an email to XCAP yesterday. Please look at the email and the photos. These traffic jams will occur if traffic returns as it was before pre-COVID-19. More traffic jams yet will occur if about 7,000 vehicles per day are redirected from Churchill Avenue to Embarcadero Road. This will further ruin the traffic flow on Embarcadero Road. The traffic consultant stated that the bottleneck is at Embarcadero, for Embarcadero traffic, is at El Camino, not due to the high school nor Town and Country Village Shopping Center. You can only get so many cars through that intersection. There is a limit. The proposed mitigations simply redirect about 3/4 of the traffic from Churchill onto Embarcadero Road. Traffic here will get worse. In addition, the proposed new traffic lights will further slow traffic. So please take these matters into consideration and search for a better way than completely closing Churchill Avenue at Alma. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dexter. I believe we have another raised hand. However,
I think Rob has already spoken on this issue.
yes.
Yeah, because he's on the list. Rob, if you could email us your comments, that would be great. Oh, his hand disappeared. I think he maybe realized. Okay, great. Well, thank you to all the speakers. We really appreciate hearing from you. I'm going to go back to XCappers. Do I have a hand up? Phil, I still have a hand up from you, but I don't see it right in your chair, so that must be an old hand. Okay, I think you guys, if the city staff can stop sharing their screen, I think I'm going to share mine because it has my notes from the last one. So I just want to put those up. Let's see, what's the best way to do this? Hold on one sec. I need to figure out how to share a specific. Well, looks like I'll have to share my desktop and that'll be easier. Actually, let me get out of that. Okay, well, let me bring, as I figure out these technical issues, I want to open it back up to XCAP members. So I feel like it's important for the people that are watching to sort of just reiterate what XCAP is and is not doing. We have been asked by City Council at this very early stage of engineering and development to highlight which alternatives we would like the city to study further. So none of the suggestions or recommendations that XCAP is making is the ultimate recommendation for the one that we will build. What we are recommending to council is that when they're able to spend more money on further developing an alternative, these are the preferred ones that we would like them to spend money on versus other ones. So I just want to really drive that home for folks because I hear a lot of concerns about the traffic study, about the mitigations. All of these are things that have been highlighted at this level of work, and we'll have to go much deeper once we give a recommendation and once the city then takes action to say this is the alternative we're going to study further. There will be further study on these things. It does not mean that any of the alternatives as designed or as proposed would happen that way. There's a lot more engineering that has to work. That is true of any of the alternatives. So I just want to continue to say that because I think there are folks who think this is an all or nothing proposition and that we are, everything that we're doing is saying, well, we are voting for the closure of Churchill with these exact mitigations. No, these are ones we're suggesting as a result of what we found. There may be others when they do further study on this, but I just wanted to clarify those things. Is there anything else at XCappers? How do XCappers feel about the list of mitigations that we came up with last week? I'm still trying to figure out how to share this on my screen in a better way. But if you guys want to talk about those. Is everybody feeling, there was some question about, were these mitigations just conceptual? Do we feel like these are baseline? Any language that XCappers feel like we should be using for this would be good to understand. Yep, Larry, thank you for saving me.
Well, I think we have two types of mitigations. One is the ones recommended by our consultant. And it seems to me that we ought to include those as and I think that Carrie used the phrase of the baseline. mitigations, unless people feel that there's one or two that shouldn't be done at all. And then there's been a whole series of ones that are, and they're it's up on the screen now. I think as to those, that we really ought to have some procedure as to whether they really represent the views of the committee or just one or two people. So I think we need maybe a process where somebody might say, I don't agree with the whichever one they don't agree with. For example, I would put the one that Nadia has suggested about closing Churchill to traffic other than local traffic. Is that on that list, Nadia?
That was part of the discussion about the bike discussion, but I think it's a good point. I think it's sort of one of those, that would be a mitigation if we were to go with option 2 of biking. So
Okay.
it's that
Sorry.
list kind of grows there.
I'll use that as an example since I think the process should remain the same. I would put that into a third category of worthy of further consideration. That is not endorsing it or not or opposing it, but just saying it's an interesting idea that deserves some further consideration.
Okay, so I'm hearing yay, nay, or further consideration. Is that what are the, you said the third category. So the first category is yes, the second one is no, and then the third one is further consideration?
My first category would be the ones proposed by the consultant.
Okay.
Second would be ones that we feel have been proposed and are really worthy of serious considerations. And third would be a lower level than that, just saying an interesting idea. And I guess a fourth category is, well, we shouldn't have a fourth category.
Okay, so let me just capture that in writing up here. So we have 3 categories of mitigations. 1 was proposed by consultants as needed. 2 was worthy of consideration. Oops. And 3 was interesting ideas.
Yeah, but needs a lot more work.
Okay. How do folks feel about what Larry's proposing? Does that sound good? And do we want to then number these? Yep, Dave.
I think Tony had his hand up before me, though.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see. Hold on. When I'm sharing my screen, guys, I can't see hands up. So you're going to have to do the old school stuff because it blocks my list of participants.
Dave, you can go ahead. I'll go next.
Okay, thanks. My question just was, how does option 1 and 2 fit into those 3 categories? Are we saying that we would do those 3 under each option 1 and 2, or?
Well, I think if we, what I would propose is if we get consensus around either 1 or 2, then let's say we got consensus around 2, then the suggested mitigations we'd go through and then number these 1, 2, 3. I don't think there are any as 1 because I don't think the consultant said, well, if you go with option 1, here's a mitigation that we have for the bike ped tunnel, because I don't recall any of those unless I'm missing something. So then we would choose, to number these, I guess 2 or 3. That would be the way I'm thinking about it. If that makes sense to everybody? Yep, Greg?
I think so. If you could make those changes, it would be much more clear.
Yep. So I think what I'm proposing now is if we want to put these, I can go through and we can number these, I can put this as a 2 or a 3 or whatever on this list. And then when we get down to the bike option and we have the rest of the bike conversation, we can then go through and put the mitigations there. Would that work?
Yeah. Is Dave frozen or just sitting?
I can't tell if he's frozen or thinking.
No, sorry, I didn't know you were asking.
He's
me.
blinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were all waiting with bated breath and you did this and didn't move.
That sounds okay to me so far. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Greg, you were going to say something.
So I almost feel like maybe these are useful categories, but I think given especially what you said earlier, we need to start setting the expectation that we are not designing these alternatives. So is there a category of here's who should work on this? So for instance, anything involving the pedestrian flow between Pali and Town and Country, or the entrances to Town and Country, needs to be done in consultation with representatives from Pali, maybe even get some students involved, and Town and Country. Any detailed design of the bicycle underpass, like some of the things that that I was suggesting last week, should be done in consultation with PABAC and other bicycle experts in Palo Alto. I don't think the public should expect that we on the XCAP are going to make all of these decisions. And that I would encourage the council as when we recommend them to do more work on this option, particular parts of the community to engage on that work. And if I'm crazy, I'm crazy, but.
I agree with you, Greg.
Yeah, so I'm just going to start a running list here. Tell me if I'm hitting
Yeah.
around the ones that I would guess.
Yeah, you got the big ones there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
City School Traffic Liaison Committee. I would say PAN, which is the Neighborhood Groups Association, because they might have some feedback. Anybody else? Feel free to popcorn, just shout it out.
I think you need to add, you need to add the Chamber of Commerce or some business organization.
Mm-hmm.
Nadia, I would add other neighborhood organizations after PAN.
Sure. You want to name them?
They don't necessarily speak for all neighborhood
For
associations.
sure. But do you have any specifics? I mean,
Couldn't you just say generally community?
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
think,
residents.
how about
adjacent neighborhood associations.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. I don't know if it's controversial, but Castellea.
Sure.
I mean, this is right in their neighborhood.
Yep. Anybody else? To me, Greg, I think I don't see that as a mitigation. I kind of see what you suggested as an overarching giant suggestion that we have for every aspect of this report. I think responding to the what we're hearing from the community is that things have changed. Yes, things have changed, but we are still tasked with doing our job. And we recognize that there's going to have to be more work done. And I think realistically, we also recognize that where before we might have thought money might have flowed sooner rather than later, we recognize that eventually money will flow, but it might be a while. And so in the meantime, there's an opportunity for there to be further outreach. And so therefore, these are all the folks to get in touch with.
Nadia, I read Greg's suggestion differently. I think it's better than what I first suggested. I would just say we eliminate, well, first of all, I would, as an aside, in number one, proposed by consultants, period. I don't know what as needed means.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
So I think worthy of consideration further study. And then to define that as in conjunction with as appropriate with the following organizations.
So I guess my question is, isn't that true of not just the mitigations, but all of the alternatives and basically everything in our report?
No, not.
I mean, if
I
they're
would
gonna,
disagree with what you said earlier that, no, let me finish. I think that the action that the council is not going to want to do further work on all the alternatives. That was what we're supposed to help them do, is to narrow down the alternatives to really give. Well, go ahead.
Sorry to be unclear. I meant once the alternatives that are selected, whichever the council eventually selects, they will do further work on. We are narrowing down the group of that they will do work on. And so when I meant all of the alternatives, I meant the one in the north that we might recommend and the one in the south, assuming they agree with us. That's what I meant. I didn't mean every single alternative will get more work.
Well, I still think what Greg is suggesting is better. And that the third category would be which wouldn't be sent to the council, just which of the list that you have that we think should not be forwarded.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Well, ones we don't like.
So we say essentially, this is our recommendation. In order to implement our recommendation, we think it's vitally important that whoever is taking this forward to the next step involve the following people. And here's a set of things to look into, not including the ones that we think are bad ideas.
Okay.
I was, I
Okay.
think what Larry said.
Yep, agreed.
So do we want to make the item number 3 then either not recommended or recommended by a minority?
If we have anything in that category.
Right. So I just want to allow for that, right? If someone is really passionate that we ought to do this one thing and we don't all agree, but we want to, you know, put that
No,
one thing in.
I don't agree. I think that we eliminate number 3. If somebody proposes an idea and the rest of us don't go along with it, they can always write a minority report.
Okay. Anybody else feel strongly about that?
I think Larry is right. I agree with him.
Okay. So that makes us 2 categories. Proposed by consultants or worthy of further consideration. And basically anything that we're listing here is pretty much something that was not proposed by the consultants, I believe, right?
Right.
We're suggesting that they should liaise with these. The only thing I would say is I'm not comfortable excluding, like, I think it's important to put out the list of people they should liaise with, but I don't want to say, okay, for just, you know, this is an example. This one alone, you should only talk to whatever, PAUSD and Town and Country. They should maybe there's other groups that we don't understand what the interface is, and they should. So I feel comfortable having the general list. I don't feel so comfortable assigning who they should liaise with on each of the mitigations. How do folks feel about that? In other words, I don't want to accidentally exclude somebody from something that where they could be part of the discussion and just weren't. Does anyone feel strongly that no, we absolutely have to assign them, or do we feel like we've captured the right group of people and they
I think
generally
it could
should be
be a
consulted?
such as, but not limited to those.
Okay.
Yeah, in general, I think it's better to stay up high level, but then, you know, if sometimes the high level is confusing, then you can give an example such as, you know. So.
Okay. By the way, I realize, do we want to put Caltrain on here? I'm just saying. Well, but I say that sort of kidding, but not really. I mean, part of their grade separation study is that that's going to go on for the next 2 years. And so the city needs to think about how these mitigations need to be discussed with Caltrain, even if we're not necessarily ready to approach Caltrain with engineering drawings, right? So I think that's important. Yeah, Tony.
Nadia, so I didn't know where to bring this up, but overall, I think we have sort of inadvertently ordered our priorities with train 1, cars 2, bikes 3, PEDs, which we don't talk about 4, trees and landscaping, sustainability, and so on 5. And so we've prioritized this inadvertently, I think, but as a result, our solutions show that priority prejudice. And so I think that we should look at, or ask council to look at, reversing that order and seeing what happens when you put people first. Not people first is a bad example, but slow moving traffic first. And then see what happens. And I think several of these alternatives might change drastically. For instance, I think many of those mitigations that this staff has proposed move the problem to a different part and think that it's solved, but it's not. So I don't agree with the mitigations fully. I think it's bike and ped deficient mitigations that show up. and I don't know how to correct it. In a design kind of situation, you go back and reverse the order and see if it still stands, right? Or you modify. And so we've not done that stage, and I understand that we don't have the money to do it, but I think it needs to be done before you can really clearly choose one over the other. So that's my big picture thing. I don't know where that goes, Nadia.
Okay, so I wrote a sentence here. General concern: designs have prioritized training cars over bikes and peds. Further designs need to consider bikes and peds equally, if not as priority.
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have a problem with adding that statement?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Anybody else? Would it help if I make the font bigger? I see some of you squinting. Is that easier to read? Okay, great.
Which designs do we mean? Do we mean the mitigation design?
All of it. All it includes how the bikes and peds cross the train tracks in general.
Well, so Tony, let me ask you this. Just to pick on one alternative. Let's say the viaduct in South Palo Alto, which I know we're not talking about, but I picked it on purpose. What is it about the bike and ped design that you feel hasn't been addressed yet?
I mean,
in the viaduct alternative.
I think it's the viaduct alternative, when you keep bikes and peds flat, I think that's a priority. And I don't think the viaduct is a problem. I think the other ones where you detour and have to do U-turns and bikes and peds have to go down slopes at 8%.
So that's your argument against the underpass. I understand, but I mean, in general, what you're saying is that we haven't throughout this process given bikes and peds a priority. I think I agree with that statement. I think what I struggle with is besides the new alternatives, meaning the partial underpass and the underpass for South Palo Alto, the other alternatives that we were presented with, basically, not counting closure, but basically the viaduct and then all the South Palo Alto options, bikes and peds were just treated equally because there wasn't really much change for them at all. It's the new designs where that needs a lot more focus. And because we've run out of time and money, we're not getting to the level of detail that seems to give the same level of priority to bikes and peds as cars and trains, which I would agree with you on. And some would say, as we've heard, that the closure doesn't give enough consideration to the bikes and peds necessarily, although we are trying to fix some of the designs in the bike options to remediate that, right?
Right. No, generally I agree with you. I don't think we are there yet fixing the bikes and peds at Churchill.
Okay. Anybody else have an objection to Tony's statement here?
No, I don't. This is Phil. But certainly if we raise the priority of aesthetics, that would have real implications for, let's say, the raised rail alternatives like viaduct or even the berm, as opposed to underpass or trench.
Mm-hmm.
We should be aware of that. I mean, this we can end up making what you might call right now a single dimension solution into a 3 or 4 dimensional solution. So I just want to know if we do sign up for that, we need to be aware of what we're signing up for.
Okay, Larry, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, well, first, this isn't a mitigation or a comment on mitigations. This to me is really a criticism of the whole concept that we've been operating under. It's saying basically that the whole process has been flawed. And I can't go along with that. I think we have to take it seriously, that this is like putting the whole argument into a footnote, which I think is inappropriate. So I can't, I think it's not appropriate here, and I think it's inappropriate anywhere in the document.
Okay.
Let me clarify, I don't think that our process is flawed. It's slightly tilted unintentionally maybe, or maybe intentionally with priorities organized in a manner that council didn't authorize, nor did the XCAP authorize explicitly. So I'm not saying that we don't have great information now, but we have that information with a priority on trains and cars. I think we need to look deeply at the other side of the slow moving traffic as intensely as the first, and we have not done that. We have good information now. The staff and consultants have done a great job, but it's deficient in the slow moving traffic regard.
Carrie.
Thanks. I agree with what both Larry and Tony are saying here, and I'm just wondering if there's a better place to capture what our observation has been. You know, if it goes in this mitigation bucket, or in like Larry suggested, a minority report, or if it goes in one of our chapters. But one thing I would say, if we do include this language, is they're not designs, these are concepts. And we have observed that the direction has, yeah, there you go. The direction has prioritized car, and we don't know where that direction came from or if it was intentional or unconscious, right? So I think it's worth pointing out, because that's one of the things that we hope the next iteration can address.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is that having this in the mitigation section isn't good, but we could have a discussion about where to put this elsewhere, and whether it ends up being a minority position. You know, I guess we could vote on where we are on that.
I'm
Yeah,
good with that.
Greg?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm kind of suggesting maybe that's kind of why I was emphasizing who the city should liaise with. And I may be biased here, but we've brought in consultants who are experts in a lot of things. But I think when it comes to cycling infrastructure and cycling safety, we probably have more expertise in Palo Alto than almost anywhere in the US. And maybe a positive way to say this is that for the designs going forward, we need to more aggressively incorporate those people. Like, you know, I'm not sure that the consultants we brought in really, you know, got what it looks like to have, you know, 700 high school kids arrive at you know, whatever time it is across it, you know, at school. And I think they, you know, have many, many good attributes, but maybe we could find a way to encourage them to be more on that particular area. I think we also need a list of all the groups you need to liaise with. But I think in particular, when it comes to bicycle infrastructure and safety, I think we should be a little bit more firm, and maybe that'll address some of Tony's concerns.
And that's sort of what I was getting at, Greg, is that the actual design work hasn't happened, right? So design work will involve all of these neighbors and experts. We really do have only got concepts at this point.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm sorry, just city staff has to weigh in just a little bit, if that's all right. I just want to kind of agree with both what Greg and Carrie were just saying, is that I think that the intention should be that the next phase addresses, you know, and more closely looks at these kind of concerns and these issues. Not to discredit what Tony's saying or really disagree with what Tony's saying or trying to say, but I think, you know, I think that you're going to have a lot of different perspectives about all the different things. So as an example, when you look at the Churchill closure as an alternative that the XCAP has, you know, selected as preferred alternative, I think it's really difficult to say that that one prioritizes car movement over bicycle movement when the bicyclists are going to actually have a separated pathway under Alma that is not stopping for train crossing bars to go down, do not have to compete with a busy street there, and potentially deal with less traffic. So, but there are other aspects to that, and it's not something that you can consider on its own, because, you know, in the Office of Transportation, we have to consider how do the existing, you know, routes to school, suggested routes to school, and other bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure connect to all these things. And that's kind of the stuff that we'll be dealing with. So I guess I would have some hesitation with that original statement being included, but I think that the direction that you're kind of moving towards, with Greg and Carrie's comments, I think actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think Tony, tell me if I got this right. Our general organizing principle has been, how do we build the separation between the train and everybody else? And the focus, our organizing principle has not been, what is the best way to move people across the membrane that is Caltrain? Because that's just been sort of the lens with which we've looked at it, right? So all of the answers come from, okay, first things first, how do we get trains and cars not to touch each other? And then we've kind of gone from there. And so whether it's intentional or not, I mean, it's just kind of the organizing principle of the way, consultants were hired, the project was labeled. But I hear you, Philip, about, for example, the closure of Churchill, but Tony is a fan of urban design and an architect. And so he feels that deeply in his core, and I get it. And so I added this sentence here. That's just the spirit of things. We're just, we're jotting down notes ultimately as we start to write these things. But if this is a statement that everyone's okay with, that hopefully will be part of what we use to sort of really highlight for the city that we've got the bike ped stuff needs help, and we know that it needs help in the
Nadia,
next phase.
This comment is not about what you wrote, but what you just said. I disagree that with the statement that we hadn't been considering moving people and bikes across the corridor as well. I don't think that's true. I'm thinking back to some of the early conversations we had with when Pat was here, and the PAUSD conversations. We've definitely discussed it and included those conversations. It's just the designs aren't there to incorporate all of the feedback because of the stage we're in.
Yeah, sorry, you said it better than I did, Carrie. I didn't mean to say that we're not considering it at all, but because the first level of design is very basic, do you raise or lower the train? By default, the first focus is the train and how they interact with cars, because that's just the geometry, right? And so
that's fair.
Anybody else? Okay, so now that we've got our list of folks that we think they ought to talk to, did we want to go back and visit this list? Unless anyone has any objections or specific things on the mitigations list that we wanted to discuss, we can go back to working on the bike discussion. I did these notes from last week, but items that were in blue were things that I showed, but we didn't discuss. I just did want to touch on, for bike option 1, I had thought of a version 2, which was not my idea, but something I'd heard from other members of the community. And I just wanted to put it out there in case it was something that the group thought had any merit at all, even for a dissenting opinion, in case that one is written. But one alternative that we heard from is that, of course, in bike option 2, which, to remind our viewers, is where the bike pedestrian tunnel at Churchill is in the middle of the road, and option 1 is where from the east side, bikes and peds hit the call button, they cross across Alma, they then go down a ramp, make a U-turn, and then come up on the other side. And so one of the highlighted benefits of option 2 is that in the center of the street, the bikes and peds are separated from both the cars along Alma and the tracks. And so one potential alternative to for bike option 1 was the question of whether we could have the ramps on the east side of Alma. And one of the members of the public had suggested you could acquire a property and then use that property to build the ramps on the east side so that you could achieve the goal of being able to get under the tracks and under Alma. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. It's not something I'm suggesting, but it was something that we heard, and I felt it was important to put that out there. And then somebody else had asked, under the council criteria, the criteria actually says provide clear, safe routes for pedestrians and cyclists crossing the rail corridor separate from vehicles. And someone asked, like, does this mean separate bikes and peds wherever possible? I've always understood this line to mean bikes and peds may have one route and cars may have another, and it's okay if they're separated. I didn't take it to mean that all bikes and peds need a separate route. And so anyone want to take a stab at those? What do you think? Yeah, Dave?
Speaking for the potential corner property that might be acquired, I would say that I prefer no eminent domain whenever possible. That's
Okay.
all.
Yep. I figured. None of us want to go there.
Nadia?
Anybody? Yep.
On that issue, I think my criteria would be that it's compatible with the adjacent neighborhood. I mean, if it's separated in the adjacent neighborhood, it should be separated. If it's combined, bikes and peds are combined, you can combine them.
I'm not sure I know what you mean by that.
If the adjacent neighborhood has a bike and ped path separated, then our solution should be that separation should continue. And if it doesn't, then you don't. So I think it should be compatible with the adjacent neighborhood.
I'm still, sorry, Tony, I'm still not getting what you mean by that. What adjacent neighborhoods? In this case, we're talking about the corner of Churchill and Alma.
Churchill and Alma is separated in the neighborhood between bikes and peds. So I think it should be separated here at Churchill.
What do you mean by it's separated between bikes and peds?
Meaning there should be there should be at least some 3 or 4 feet of green space of landscaping that separates the ped from the bike.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying if you had, so did I get this right? If you did take a corner property and you built ramps, then you would want the bikes and the pedestrians and the bikes in one ramp and the pedestrians in a separate ramp. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Ideally.
Okay.
Yeah, not.
Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to throw this out there to see whether it looked like in our last meeting we had a pretty strong majority for bike option 2. Wanted to check in with everybody and see if that's still where how we're feeling about that. Does anyone want to go back to talking about bike option 1 or try to sway us otherwise, or are we focusing on bike option 2 and do we want to discuss the final mitigations we'd propose?
I have a comment about the bike option 2.
Sure.
The one thing we haven't looked at is how this affects traffic. It'd be really good to get some feedback from the traffic expert before this is finalized. And that right now there's a lot of traffic from Alma down Churchill to Embarcadero. And if you cut off that route, what is the impact? And how many cars per day would we be impacting? And if it's small enough, I think this is a great design, but right now we're just kind of glossing over that.
Okay, so understand traffic implications. Yes, thank you. I had that on my list as well.
Are you talking traffic implications of bike option 2 with additional closure, or
Yeah,
bike option 2 as proposed by staff?
I think he means with additional closure. Is that right, Keith?
Correct.
Yeah, because
Yes,
what?
clearly
Yeah.
we would have to, yes, when the first, yes, absolutely.
Traffic from Embarcadero.
So I just want to make comment on that. I think the traffic is minimum. It's not like a lot of car goes through because in the morning it's closed. You can go straight from east-west on Alma.
Yep.
And in the evening there are some, but you know, because the Embarcadero is closed on the other side, right, from Turning and Churchill. So I think in general, you know, there aren't many cars passing, but I could, I mean, Dave, what do you think? Do you have any comments? You lived on that.
I don't have any speculation on traffic and effects beyond what's already in any traffic study.
Philip, is it an easy question for us to ask Gary? Because I know we do have the traffic data on how many cars go across, whether a closure on the east side of Churchill between Alma and Emerson, right? Is that right? Alma and yes, Alma and Emerson would create a significant amount of diversion back onto Embarcadero. Is that something we could do without turning up a big bill?
Oh, is it? Okay.
Now we see you. Yep.
I think it's something we could, I could talk about with Ripon, but our contract with Gary is actually completed.
Okay.
Yeah, to answer your question, we don't have
Okay.
any more funding available in his contract. I think it's essentially ended. But it's something that we could, staff could look at.
Okay, great. Yeah, I had that highlighted on my list as well, that people were worried that because when you're traveling along Embarcadero, there is an option to make a left turn onto Churchill and go straight down and then get onto Alma from there, that by closing off that possibility, you would now have a lot more people who would stay on Embarcadero. And so the question was, is that going to cause traffic issues? Okay. So how does the proposed bike things look here? Do we feel like we've got all the important ones?
I had comments, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to note that Ken Joy and I had an exchange about straight through underpasses for bike ped and all that kind of stuff. I think what I got out of that conversation was I'm not sure there are any standards for packs of bikes going through an underpass. It's more like,
yeah, the packs though happen as a result of the bunching of the light.
Maybe that's a good point. Not sure, but
just to jump in really quickly, I mean, we have visually observed that to be the case, that the bunching occurs because of the crossing bars going down and the lights. So that does happen. That's not to say that all bunching occurs because of that, because there are people that ride together in groups. But a large chunk, especially at that particular intersection, is due to that.
Yeah, you'll get a group of kids who carpool together, but typically it's not more than 4 or 5 at a time. But the large bunching is just because they have to hit the call signal and then they gather, right? The longer they wait, the more they gather, the worse the size gets.
Yeah. Okay. So I was just going to remark, we didn't find any standards for bunches of bikes going through. So, but yeah, it'd be great to get their feedback, which we've talked about before. The only other thing I wanted to point out is if we close Churchill, I think we'll need a turnaround road that allows people to go down one side of the underpass bike and then turn around to the other side and come back out. So just something to keep in mind. I think on the east side, that's probably possible. I'm not so sure about the other side. And we'd have to consider trucks and emergency vehicles too. So just something to think about as we go through.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understood. You're talking about vehicles on which side of the street would need a turnaround?
So if we close the access to Alma,
yep,
they couldn't just be 2 roads going on either side of the underpass and dead ending.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need a cross over the top of the opening of the underpass to allow a car to go around and out.
So one thing that might be helpful, so at the Bryant intersection, I don't know if they're electric or not, but basically the bike poles are they remote controlled, Philip, or how do they move? Because I know that they can go down and up for the garbage trucks. Has anyone else ever seen that?
Philip just stepped away. What's your question again?
So on Bryant Boulevard, we have these barriers that are there for the bicycles. It's a bicycle throughway, but I have observed that the poles, I can't remember if they go to, I lived in Italy for a while. In Italy, there's folks who live in that street have a remote control to actually make them go down, but I don't know if they're physically removed or if they have a remote control, but they go down and they allow emergency vehicles or garbage trucks or whatever to be able to then continue on that street and not have to do a turnaround.
Nadia, you can get a remote control device.
I mean, yeah, emergency vehicles do have preemption on traffic signals that would give them a priority and shut down other traffic movements. So usually that's for ambulances, fire trucks, and police vehicles.
So this is a metal pole that is sticking up in the middle of the street and makes it so that only bikes can go through the street and not cars. But from time to time when needed, the poles either submerge into the ground or are removed so that a truck could go through.
They have them at Stanford.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bollards would be the technical term.
Thank you. I knew there was a fancy word.
So I think what you're
have
meaning.
removable bollards to accommodate for service vehicles to access that when needed. Yeah.
Okay, so do we want to include the word bollard somewhere in these mitigations?
I think though, if you say that, I think what would have to happen is you're talking about bollards that lead onto Alma, right? Because the problem is if you get a truck down, or even forget about emergency, let's say it's an 18-wheeler, someone wants to move in, right, to a house there. They'd have to go down one side and then back that 18-wheeler out of that road, out of Churchill, okay? Because each road on either side of the opening is going to only be one way. There's no way we can get a two-way road there.
Okay, Larry, I see your, sorry, go ahead, Dave, you can finish and then I see Larry.
We're getting way down the road into details, which we really shouldn't. It seems to me that what we ought to do is to propose to recommend to the council like option number 2, and to say is possible mitigations to that or things they want to think about are closing Churchill on the east side and then a bunch of other things. But other than that, we're sitting here trying to design a road that just is not appropriate.
Yes.
No, I think that's true. The bollards might be too much detail. However, can cars back out of their driveway with option 2 on Churchill?
I think that's why we're sending them to more design.
It's easy to tell, right? It is there 24-foot backup after the curb, and it doesn't.
Well, but you could theoretically take out the sidewalk there because you're now making the entire thing basically a pedestrian and bike zone. So there's some play, and I think to Larry's point, I think we have to basically say this needs more study, and we can put in things like, so you guys can see me editing right here. I said, explore closing Churchill to cars on the east side between Alma and Emerson. I added that because I think we had some public comment. People thought we meant closing Churchill on the west side. And then I have consider moving trucks, garbage trucks, emergency vehicles, etc. Anything else?
So I think Keith made a comment last time about bike option 2, saying that the benefit is that, eliminating light for the bikers or pedestrians and then go down underpass to the bike. That's a benefit. Was that mentioned? Is this place that we should, if that's the benefit?
Sure, we can, that's a good point. We can capture the benefits. Okay, so why?
Chair, I also want to add, I think you had a question regarding how many people are making right turn from Churchill on to Alma, if there was any changes to the traffic flow, or if we were to make a full Churchill closure or provide for anything. So I think your question was how many vehicles make right turn on Alma from Churchill. There are about 76 in the morning and 70 vehicles in the afternoon that were indicated in the underpass study. So that data collection showed that, those kind of movements, about 70 to 76 per hour during those peak times.
Okay, so from a traffic perspective, Ripon, we would say that's negligible? Or what's the relevant?
Those one would be if we were to not only local traffic was to use that particular segment, then those 76 vehicles will be diverted onto the parallel, streets, similar to when we were looking at the option for the, other Wilkie Way. There was about 80 vehicles that were going into the Wilkie Way if there were no right
so
moment.
I think in the case of Churchill, this is what's unique about Churchill is that Embarcadero runs at an angle. And so Churchill is the only straight line from between Alma and Embarcadero. So when you're further back on Embarcadero, like over by Walter Hayes, and you're continuing straight, you have an option to make a left turn onto Churchill that takes you straight to Alma. And so I think the concern, I think this was raised by the Professorville neighbors, is if you now don't have that option, that just puts more people on Embarcadero. And so it wouldn't necessarily put on the immediately adjacent parallel road, because that would be, I think, Lowell and Kellogg's maybe. And that's probably not a logical place where those are coming from, because they may be originating further back.
So yeah, in general, what happens is if those are 76 peak hour vehicles, some of them originate from close to Alma, and some of them further down, and some of them farther away. So they all will be rerouted to different streets within the network whatever is the shortest path for them to get onto their destination. And they might get onto Embarcadero at further back or closer to the Alma or in between somewhere, wherever it, they originate their trip from, and makes it easier for them to get onto their destination. They might get on towards the Embarcadero, towards the Oregon Expressway, or they might go towards the Embarcadero, depending on their destination, right?
Okay, yeah, it's from their O&D. Okay. Okay, so why this option? So separates, I'm just going to start making notes. Feel free to shout things out. Separates bikes and peds from train and Alma. More direct for bikes, peds, less turns.
Nadia, why are we doing this?
Well, In Young said that she wanted to make sure that we're capturing, if we're voting for option 2, the why are we voting for option 2? So
That's what we write in the reports, though.
Okay.
Are we going to write the reports in real time?
That'd be great. Okay, be off my homework list, but okay, fair enough. Okay, so how about, I think Larry makes a good point. Why don't I mean, if we agree that option 2 is the one, we'll come back with some suggestions for this, and then you guys could tell us whether we hit all the points or we missed anything. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to sure where we're supposed to say.
Yeah, it'll be in there.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so so I think we kind of have to, we're not necessarily making a motion specifically, I think, because we still have to really flesh this out, and then you guys will have to agree to it in the report. But I wanted to be sure that, are we all in favor of option 2 generally, and are we okay with the seal stuff as well? Or is there anyone who supports option 2 but does not support seal?
Well, I'm assuming that seal and all the other ones that are listed below there are really suggested mitigations for the council to consider.
Yep. I just wanted to see if there was somebody who's like, well, I'm only voting for that one if I also get seal. I mean, I guess it's possible. Tony, you raised your hand for a sec.
No, I cannot support either. I said that earlier, and so it's consistent.
You can't support either of the bike crossings?
Either of the options. I think there are other options out there that are better. It needs to be looked at by the bike committee or some other person. Payback could do that. Or like when you started, you said other people should get together and figure out the bike ped options, and I think there are better ones out there.
But so, sorry, Tony, so we're saying that you're voting for the closure of Churchill, and then we have to identify where are the places that we think there ought to be bike ped crossings. And then of those, which ones do we think are better? So you're saying you don't think any of these crossings are worthy?
Right.
Where would you propose a bike ped crossing, since your argument before was that we ought to have as many bike ped crossings as we can? So you're confusing me.
No, I don't mean to confuse you. I just think there are better options. I think if these are the only ones, then I'll go along with it, but I don't think those are the only ones. I think Payback can come up with better options.
But when you mean better options, are you talking about the general design based? Keep in mind what we saw was completely conceptual, and they're going to have to rework. They're going to have to come back into urban design phase and landscaping and all the things that we talked about. So we're just trying to get a sense of location and general concept. So given that you have a lot of bike ped experience, what did we miss here that you think somebody else might be able to come up with? Because we got to pick a location.
Well,
Oh, I think you accidentally muted yourself.
oh, sorry. I think 2 is better than 1, but neither of them are sort of compatible with Palo Alto's bike infrastructure. And I think we need to look at that and see if it can be remedied or changed.
So I just want to comment that I believe the current bike and ped, well, then now out of date, but needing to be updated bike and ped plan, which I believe is from 2012, did recommend seal as a crossing. And, that was something that worked through the Payback process. And, of course, again, the new plan would work through Payback. But my understanding is that's, something that was, had gone through Payback as something that was identified as a location for a ped bike crossing.
Well, and Tony, I don't have my map in front of me, but actually when you worked on the rail corridor study, your group actually identified 3 places. You guys had identified Kellogg and Churchill and Seal as places where you wanted bike ped crossing. So my next question was going to be, did we want to have a discussion about whether there should also be one at Kellogg? Because I thought that's where you were going to be leaning based on your previous work. But now it sounds like you're saying you don't believe in any of these crossings, which that's what I'm saying. It's confusing me.
No, I'm sorry, Nadia, maybe I'm mistaken. I'm for the more crossings you get, the better. They just have to be done in a way that people use them. Like the article that I think Yoriko sent around that described, I think Nadia, you sent that same article around that explains why if you invert priorities or design bike and ped paths just to say that it's designed and you check the box, people may not use them. So what I'm saying is just look at human behavior and design these things so that they're used. The more, the better.
Okay, so if you're basing it on that article, to me, that article is what called out option 2 better than option 1 because it was less circuitous, right?
Yes.
And so I just want to check in with you and make sure that, I mean, we are not saying that what we were presented with is it. We are saying that we want them to come back with other designs, and here's some suggestions about other things that we should look at. Is that okay?
Should take a vote.
The more, the better.
Okay.
Nadia, I think we should vote. It seems to me that maybe with Tony as the exception, the group is in favor of option 2, and I think we ought to.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm getting to that. I have one more thing that's still in blue. This comes from last week. So some of the, if you recall last week, I showed you guys lots of pictures of different bike ped tunnels. And one thing that I saw, which was a concept, which I don't know if it would work. And obviously, since they're going to have to do more design work on there, this could be like it's no way it's not possible, or maybe yes way it works. But in other places, when they've built bike tunnels, they've looked at the possibility of having either certain emergency vehicles or like Caltrain maintenance vehicles or other things be able to actually fit in the bike ped tunnel. And again, I don't know if it's possible, but thought it was an interesting concept that we could throw out there that they could consider in terms of design concepts. Any thoughts on that?
To do that, you'd have to pretty much do a car-sized underpass, which is back to way back when we proposed an underpass at the road, right? Without grade separating the tracks, right? It'd have to be like literally that big. Although 1 lane, potentially, that might be something you might be thinking about.
Yeah, 1 lane, and it's in the center of the road, and it's only in case of like something desperate, right? It's not it's not anything that anybody would regularly travel.
The road would be it would be stepped due to ADA.
I have no idea. I'm just throwing this out there as
guys, you guys are designing the bike paths, okay? Please let's not do that.
Okay, I'll take it out. It was just a
No, I mean, I think you should leave it in as something they consider, but I don't think we should design it now, but they can consider it.
You know, I put in here a link, and let me see if I can open the window to what it looks like, then you can see what I was talking about. See if this works. Nope, it's not a great picture. All right, we can just drop it. It's fine. Okay, so now taking a vote, I'm trying to figure out a way for this to, looks like this is all on the same page. Let me move this title back so we can see this better. So we can see what we're voting on. So it's just this area that's.
My alarm was just going off in my house, but I was just going to say, I actually think that picture was a great picture because it showed just how high.
Yeah. You mean this one?
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't sure if you could see it. Yeah.
And I agree too.
Okay.
It's a massive tunnel. I mean.
Yeah. I don't know that it's even remotely possible, but my, hashtag squad goals, right? As my teenagers would say. I just thought it's something that they could think about and if it could make it something possible. So thoughts on putting it back in?
No.
I
No.
think so.
I'd
I
take
think
it
it's
out.
fine. I mean, okay, so you had that, but also last week you shared the picture of sort of the wider tunnel with stairs on the sides.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And I know that I emailed you about skylights.
Yes,
I
yes,
think
yes.
that, having sort of a couple of inspirational pictures for
Would it be
whoever's
better
going
to
to take this to the next phase of the process. Here's the kind of thing, the kind of experience we're aiming for is not a terrible idea.
Would
Okay.
that be something we could put in one of the chapters instead of as this directive?
Sure, I'd be fine with inspirational pictures. Do we want to
Yeah.
do we want to gather some inspirational pictures? I could try to bring some to the next meeting, and then you could tell me if that works. I'll include in there the link to the one I just showed, and I can try to pull up ones that we pulled up last week. I'm fine with that. This report could use some pictures as far as I'm concerned, because it's like the world's densest report ever.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about this school bus depot at Pali.
Mhm.
So why was that is an issue if it's with the closure of Churchill?
Well, I'm not the person to ask because I didn't vote for it. So somebody else can answer.
I mean, I don't think any impact to the bus depot if the Churchill's closed. They can go other ways, or it's not like, they all leave same time, or I don't know. Like, I thought initially the driver who commutes to Pali or something like that, but I'm just wondering if I missed something.
What was it even if you didn't vote for the outcome though, was it one of your concerns, or who was concerned about it?
I think it's a community, people kept pointing it out in the email that they sent it to us, a couple of them, and then I just didn't understand it, so I just want to.
I mean, it looks to me like behind Pali, there is a school bus depot that has service roads that takes it to both ends of Pali.
Right.
So it's not like they're forced to go on Churchill. But yeah, well, we should talk about how we're going to write the report.
No, I just want to ask a question. It's not a big issue. Just, it wasn't, I was just thinking, going through all the points, and I don't know what was, something I didn't understand it, but that's fine.
I believe the buses mostly, they're used to pick up the kids that come from East Palo Alto. So I think most of the buses have come from the east side of the tracks, and maybe it has to do with the circuitousness of that. But to be honest, I don't think we were ever presented with maps of where the buses go, to be fair. Okay, so back to this. How are we doing? Bike option 2, are we feeling it? I can't see everybody's camera.
Just have
So.
a quick vote. We prefer
Okay.
option 2, and then we have a separate vote on whether we're including all these proposed considerations and think-abouts as in addition to option 2.
Okay, so what Larry said, are you guys okay voting for option 2? And then we'll do a separate vote on whether these are the right mitigations that we want to include with option 2. So, okay, anybody want to make the motion for me? And actually, I'm going to take a new step and try to write the motion into the notes, because then later people ask me, what did we vote on? And I actually have to wait until the transcript comes out. So I will go ahead and take notes of whoever wants to make the motion. Larry, I'm kind of staring at your little square.
Well, I think the motion simply that we recommend to the council option 2 if the council goes along with closing Churchill. Option 2 for a bike pedestrian tunnel.
I'll second that.
I'm going to put in concept. Is that okay with everybody? With the understanding that it has to go to further design, because then there's a lot of consternation about design. Does that work?
Yeah, that was my comment. Is there some way to recognize that there's more work that needs to be done?
Yeah.
However you want to put that, I think I'd recommend making that little amendment there.
Okay, so friendly amendment, Larry, will you take that?
No such thing
Okay.
in the amendment, but I accept it anyway.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot.
The
that you'd hate that.
unfriendly amendment to.
The dun, dun, dun. Okay, so, all right. So here's the motion, and that was Larry's motion, and the second was whom? Greg? Who? Yeah, Greg.
Yeah.
Okay. I can take, is there anyone who wants to speak to the motion? Larry, do you want to speak to it? And then Greg?
No, I mean, I've been advocating for option 2 all along. I think it's very important that if we're gonna go to all this work and, cause people, make people lives change by changing the way the cars go, we need to make the way the bikes go as safe and as efficient as possible, and having it possible for them to get under both Alma and the tracks without stopping at a light, I think is going to do a great service to the area.
Great, thank you. Larry, did you have anything?
I agree 100% with what Greg just said.
Great. Anybody else want to speak on this? I'll just add, I agree with what Greg said. I think I'm okay. I like the idea of making it easier for bikes and peds to get across in the fastest way possible and with as least amount of obstacles. So the separation of both Alma and the tracks is the most attractive for me. Anybody else want to speak to it before we vote? Okay.
Just a quick comment.
Yeah.
Just I was probably one that was more against this one, but I can actually get behind it if people who take this on find a way to make it wider. I think then it'll be a lot safer, it'll be more inviting versus the 10-foot proposal that it was before.
Okay. And so I think we captured the wider right here in the mitigations. So, okay, so I'll take a vote. Greg Braille?
Yes.
Phil?
Abstain.
You're going to abstain, okay?
Yeah, because
Okay,
of my previous vote.
okay.
Sorry, but that's how I feel.
It's okay. Tony?
Abstain. I think there are better options.
Okay. Inyang?
Agree?
Larry?
Yes.
I agree. Keith?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Carrie?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 9 yes and 2 abstain. And that would be Phil and Tony.
7 yes, not 9.
Saying thank you, my math is not well. Okay. All right, moving on to the mitigations. Anybody want to discuss these, or are we good to make a vote? Does anyone want to make a motion for me?
Did we just add the word potential mitigations? Add potential?
Sure. And are we taking all the mitigations together? In other words, is add a bike crossing at Seal really a bullet here? And then I can move all these bullets into the right further? How do folks feel about that? So it would look more like this. And I would move these like this. Is that what we're voting on?
Well, I'm not opposed to inspiration pictures, but I don't see how they're a mitigation.
You don't see how what?
I don't see how inspiration pictures are a mitigation.
Okay.
Well, I think they are. I think we are so comfortable with words, but not as comfortable with pictures. And I think they both tell a story. So I think we should keep it.
Do we want to move inspirational pictures out of potential mitigations? And next week I'll bring you pictures and we can vote on the pictures so that everybody can yay or nay them?
If we're doing that, I think we're really descending into design land.
Okay.
Because one thing we don't understand is, and this does get to engineering stuff that AECOM will be concerned about, is can any of those pictures be feasibly built at reasonable cost or reasonable impact. We just
Okay.
don't know.
All right, I can understand that. Yeah, Dave?
I was kind of scratching my head, but I think I figured out why I was scratching my head. And I think it has to do with the titling of the whole section, that it's bike option 2 potential mitigations.
Okay.
So I think some of the things you've listed here are general mitigations, not necessarily tied to specifically bike option 2. So some of them are, like want to explore flatter, wider, taller crossing, but adding a light at California, yeah, is not really directly associated with that particular option.
Okay.
So it might be that there's the Uber title is, yeah, general potential mitigations. And then there's some related to bike option 2, as we've talked about. And then there's some related to the seal one and then other things that have nothing to do with underpasses, right? Like the light and other things. So
Okay.
that feels more, I think, what you're getting at.
Okay, so do you think this moves up under general mitigations?
But as a subheader, right? It's like,
Yeah, okay,
right?
I'm seeing it.
And then bike option 2 would also be the same as that seal one, where there's a bigger header and then there's things underneath it too.
Let me just make spaces here so no one thinks that that's what we're talking about. Okay, does that look better?
Yeah, but then I would put bike option 2 as a bullet at the same level as add bike ped crossing at seal.
Well, I think that we're trying to get, well, I guess we just voted on bike option 2. So yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, or put all those up with the other thing, right? The other motion really is stuff to explore alongside the bike option 2. And then this is about everything else that we haven't talked about, isn't it?
Okay, so how's this? And then I move these in. Is this what you're saying?
That would be one way to do it, I think, yeah.
Okay.
But you brought up an interesting point, which maybe that whole section should just go with the motion at tops. Like, we recommend it, but it's a concept. And by the way, here are the ideas related to things you should look at more. And then here's everything else, this motion that we're talking about now. You could do it that way, I think.
So I think if I added it as part of the motion, I don't want it to seem like conditional on these things, because I don't think that was the intention. So do we think that this captures it? How does everybody else feel about what Dave is saying? Does this structure seem to make more sense? And I can take this mitigations thing out and capture it somewhere else. Hold on, let me take out the bullet. I can put this under ideas for later. How's that?
Well, I still don't understand the purpose of it. And anything we put in here, in effect, we're recommending. And I don't see how we can recommend those.
How we can recommend which? The ideas for the bike tunnel? Is that the one you're talking about? Because your audio cut out a little bit.
I'm sorry, but no, I put in pictures in there. We're suggesting these would be better ideas.
Okay.
And I don't think we're do that.
Okay. Is everyone okay with taking it out then? On the danger that we are veering into engineering land? Okay.
No,
it's gone.
I'm not, I think we should have kept it, but
this isn't part of the mitigation. This is just things we want to include in the report.
Right.
Such as that.
Larry, would you be comfortable putting it into the section that is not mitigations, but is just general thoughts?
No, because I don't see what it accomplishes. I think what you put in the report, which when it has majority support or consensus support, you're saying this is something we ought to be doing.
Okay.
But I think what we're saying is,
so when we just say aspirational thoughts, what does that really mean?
And I mean, I hate to say this, but the inspirational pictures are captured in text here, right? The pictures are going to capture wider tunnels, right? I would assume increased visibility. I mean, those are the things that you've written here in the text. I'm not sure if there's something else I'm missing. I mean, if there is, I think maybe add it in the text if you wanted to say.
Yeah, I'm thinking better sight lines is another word I heard. Oh, you muted yourself, Philip, somewhere
Oh,
part of your.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think that's a better way to capture it. So I would just suggest that you put, you know, the actual things that you want in text here.
Okay. I think also we talked about daylight, right? Wider, flatter tunnels, fully lit crossing, or I guess it's increased sight lines. Does that capture it, guys? Instead of inspirational photographs, do we have all the key adjectives in here that we need?
I think
Flatter, wider, taller, fully lit.
picture described it better, much better.
Well, you're a visual thinker.
So just to remind folks why we had put that in there, what we had discussed was, could we collect inspirational stuff in the chapters and not in the motions and stuff? So I think it's good to capture it, but Larry's point is, does it need to go into this part, or can it be a chapter that we send along with our report?
Yeah, but I think Larry's also saying that we're making a recommendation and we can't really recommend design ideas because that's what we're sending them to go back to do.
I agree. Yeah, I think these are design things that we want to pass along as part of our product or work product for this, but it's not what we don't necessarily have to include that in our items that we're voting on. It can be material that we send along.
Yeah, but I think Larry was saying to remove it completely. Did I get that right, Larry? You don't even want it in the report generally?
Yeah, well, unless there's a chapter that says, here are some crazy ideas that if you want to really consider doing something really special, take a look at these.
I think that's what they're saying, and except for characterizing it, we don't have to characterize it, but I think we want to send along some cool stuff we found during our research, and that should be fine, but that's design work.
Well, I'm always concerned that one's recommendations have credibility. And when I saw that picture of that great, beautiful, wide, high tunnel, which is obviously impractical at Churchill, and I don't know what its cost would be, but it's obviously going to be way outside our means. I think we're really hurting what we recommend. And a totally different point, Nadia, you can take out the words "want to" in that line.
Okay.
Just to be consistent with everything else, starts with a verb.
Okay. I would just say, as a Palo Alton, I'm comfortable that if and when this gets to the next level of looking at building these grade separations, there will be some other robust and lengthy process that will also have public outreach, and that will also have maybe a committee similar to this, just talking about bikes, where people will also be able to give feedback. And so maybe those of us who have inspirational photos, like Tony and I have been carting these things around for 10 years, will continue to hold on to them so that we can use them in the appropriate time. Because I think Tony and I have been trading Pinterest pages for probably as long as Pinterest has been around at this point. So I'm okay with that.
Nadia, is there some difference between the first bullet point and the third bullet point?
Let's see, first bullet point here.
No, under bike option 2.
No, I think you're right. I think those are the same. Let me just move this over here.
First bullet doesn't talk about traffic though.
Yeah, actually the difference was, oops, let me take that out. The difference is one is the mitigation of putting a center bike option is to explore closing the cars. The second one is understand the implication of that closure.
Seems to me that
because one is it may
studying the traffic implications.
Right. I think maybe this one is more design focused. Like, does it fit? Can people park their cars? Could you fit moving trucks? Could you fit? Which is and to your point, if you close it, the next obvious thing is you're going to have a traffic study. But I guess we're trying to highlight in a different bullet the implication of the closure, and is it diverting traffic to Alma, which is or to Embarcadero, which is something we specifically heard concerns
about. How about this? Explore closing Churchill, comma, including its traffic implications.
Okay. Okay. Where would you put, sorry, where was the comma? I missed it.
It could go after Emerson at the end of the first line.
Okay.
No, I would put it after, I think I put it after the word Churchill.
Okay. I think that chops up the fact that we're closing it to cars, but not to bikes and peds. Maybe that's not the right spot for that clause. Right? Residents would consider moving trucks, garbage, and how about and traffic implications, including any additional traffic onto Embarcadero. How's that?
Question, would there ever be exploring something like a closure without traffic implication exploration?
I think probably not, but we just want to be super explicit that this is what it was, a concern that was raised. We're echoing it back, and we hear people that it's specifically about cars getting put back onto Embarcadero. Because what I heard from the folks that are in Professorville is like, has the traffic mitigations proposed by Hexagon specifically said they were conceptual, and this additional suggestion that XCAP did, which was out of scope basically, or not talked about ever with Hexagon, could further exacerbate that. And I just want to call it out very specifically. So, okay, are we ready to vote? How's everybody feeling? Okay, someone want to give me a motion? Larry, I'm staring at you again. You're the motion guy today.
Can't tell when somebody's staring at you.
I know.
I move we adopt the list of bike option number 2 potential mitigations as shown on the screen.
Okay. Does he have a second? Anyone want to second him? Great.
Second.
Dave Shen's a second. Okay. Larry moves. Dave seconds. Adopt the following. Okay. Anyone want to speak, or the maker or the seconder? Anybody else want to speak on this before we take a vote? Okay, I'm going to call the roll. Greg Braille,
Yes.
Phil Burton,
Abstain.
Tony Carrasco,
Abstain.
In Young,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
me, I vote yes. Keith,
Yes.
Dave Shen,
Yes.
Terry.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so that passed 7-0. I know I'm not doing this in the right order, but at least I got it on there. Okay. All right. I think that concludes the Churchill piece for today.
702, Nadia.
Yeah, 7-0. Is that correct?
No. Didn't we have it? Weren't they abstains?
There were seven ayes, 2 abstains. How's that? Did I get it? Sorry, I'm really bad at taking notes and trying to chair a meeting. So I did get a much larger monitor, so you all don't look like little teeny tiny squares. So that's gotten better. Okay, so that concludes, I think, this part. And so what Larry and I will now do is try to crunch all this into more expansive words and bring back a chapter at some point. I'm not going to make any promises about when until I've had a chance to talk to Larry and check in with him, because he and I are going to be spending a lot of time working on these sections together.
Chair, I want to clarify the traffic volumes that were in the traffic study. So there are 2 figures that were stated in the traffic study. The one with the closure options only stated 5 and 7 in the AM and PM peak hour right turning movement. The 70 and 76 were shown in when we were doing the underpass options. So all the traffic on Churchill would be going on to the making a right turn. So I want to stand corrected there.
Okay. So you said between 5 and 7 cars? 5 in the
Yeah.
AM, 7 in the PM?
We're making right turns at this intersection.
Okay. And how many left turns?
I can pull that up right now. Give me 1 second. It's
It's okay.
figure number.
Do you want to share your screen, Ripon? Is that easier?
Sure, I can do that.
Let me stop sharing mine.
Can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
So right here is the existing traffic volumes. That
We need
shows
to,
What was that, Larry?
well,
5.
gonna change anything? I think it's the move.
Yes, no, it doesn't change. I just wanted to correct myself.
Okay, 5 and 7. Okay.
And the left turns were 71 and 60.
Okay, great.
So if they were all to make right turns, then that would be 76 around.
Okay. I think we'd have to also take into account the numbers that would have gone straight and now get diverted as well, right?
But those are already in the traffic study, the further mitigation.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay, that helps.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Do we want to take a 3-minute break? I would love to. Let me just speak for myself. I have run out of water and it's pretty hot in the room that I'm in. If we could have, it's 6:09. So let's call it, if we could be back by 6:14, not to be too specific, that gives everybody about 5 minutes to take a little bit of a breather before we get into our next big section. And we're going to hear public comment on the next item, which would be the deliberations for Meadow Charleston. So we'll take
How long are we going to go tonight?
we go till 7 tonight. So, but I'm just offering a 4-minute break if possible, so I may water myself.
I'll have to, I may have to leave at 6:30, but I'll check with my spouse.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. If we can be back in 4 minutes, guys, that'd be great. Okay, and for the members of the audience who are waiting patiently, we're going to be moving to item number 6, which is to begin deliberations of Meadow Charleston. So if you're joining this meeting to be able to speak on that item, now would be a great time to digitally raise your hand for us so we can see how many folks we've got. And just like we've done for Churchill, we will allow people to speak at this meeting. And if you didn't get a chance to speak at this meeting, you can speak at the next one, but we're really trying to encourage all the public comment in the beginning. It helps us with our deliberations. So again, if you can be raising your hand now so we can see how many speakers we have, that would be awesome. As ex-cappers are rejoining us. Let's see. Can't see what time. Carrie and Keith and Tony, can you just let me know when you're back, so if you're here, so that I know that I have you.
Thank you for having a break. I don't know how the school board does it.
I know, I couldn't either. Okay. Let's see, Keith, are you back with us? I think he's not still here. We'll wait for Keith and Carrie. Carrie, are you here? Okay. Carrie and Keith and Tony, can you just let me know if you're back?
Here.
All right. Just waiting on Tony and Carrie. Just don't want to start until they're here so that they can hear the public comment on this.
Nadia, I do have to leave at 6:30.
Okay. It looks like we have enough hands raised that we may just go public comment through the end of the meeting. So we probably will not have any further deliberations today, but we will, anybody who can speak today, this is a great time to do it. So we appreciate it. Okay, Tony, are you back? Give Tony another minute or two. Tony, if you're back, and you can unmute yourself, that way I know you're back. That would be great. It shows me that Tony has his hand up. Tony, are you there? We've lost Tony for right now. He's there, he's muted, and his hand is up. So I'm confused. Okay, I guess we can just start public comment and Tony will join us when he's ready. If I've got Elizabeth and Tarag who could help me, that would be great. So because this is public comment for the deliberations, each speaker can have 3 minutes. So, and we've got lots of speakers. And if we run out of time, the meeting ends at 7. So if we end up going, we'll stop just before then to be able to end it. And if we have to keep going with public comment at the next meeting, we will do so. So I just wanted to let everybody know. Okay, go for it. Elizabeth and Tarag, can you start public comment for me? Did I lose my staff?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're having technical difficulties here.
That's possible.
No, you're not having technical difficulties. I just was a little longer than I thought. Excuse me.
Oh, no worries. Totally understand.
Okay, we have a number of speakers currently.
Yes, they will each get 3 minutes.
Okay.
And if you could just note who everybody is in case, so the meeting will end at 7. If we run over, then we can let those, we'll go until these speakers go, and then if we'll take more public comment at the next meeting if we have to.
Sounds good. Okay, the first speaker that we have is Carlin Otto, followed by Michael Lizelle and Carlin, please go ahead and unmute yourself. You may begin to speak. Hello, Carlin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Good, excellent. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I am speaking for 36 people. All of these people live in Charleston Meadows neighborhood. My 3 minutes replace 1 hour and 48 minutes of public comment time. I am saving you from listening to over 100 minutes. So please give this message the appropriate weight. This is our message. We do not want an elevated rail of any style in our neighborhood. We do not want an elevated train operating through any part of Southern Palo Alto. We do not want rail grade options that are called viaduct or hybrid, because these are elevated rails. To summarize, we do not want any type of elevated tracks. Here are some of the personal comments from the people. In addition to the people who have signed this petition, please keep in mind that there have been previous similar petitions, and many people have spoken out against elevated options at the various meetings and forums. There have been so many meetings and forums over the past few years that citizens cannot be expected to speak up every time, over and over and over. My neighborhood is mostly single-family, single-story houses with roofs at under 15 feet high. Both the viaduct and the hybrid options would have trains running above the rooftops of most houses. The trains will be highly visible for blocks around, and the noise will spread widely because there is nothing to block it. The noise consultant, during his verbal presentation, I was there, erroneously assumed that enough buildings would be high enough to block the noise. So the noise report is not accurate. The noise that is spread to adjacent streets by the elevated options will be louder than estimated in that report. I thought we made our opposition to elevated options clear many, many months ago, when over 600 of us from all over Palo Alto signed a petition against elevated tracks. I do not understand why these elevated options are still being considered. We should learn from New York City. Elevated rail creates acoustical and visual blight and destroys the sense of community. This infrastructure will live longer than a human lifetime. Build something that we can live with and not something that will be hated and resented. Elevated trains divide cities into good and bad neighborhoods. I live next to the train. I do not want my neighborhood to be labeled bad. No elevated train. No, 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 no elevated train. Anyway, you get the idea. That's my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Carlin. The next speaker is Michael Wessel. Michael, go ahead and unmute yourself. You may begin to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. First of all, thanks to XCAP for all your hard work. I really appreciate it. In its current form, I cannot support the Charleston Meadow underpass.
Well, did anybody else lose audio? I lost audio.
Lost audio also.
And it looks like we lost Michael Wessel completely from the list. Michael Wessel, if you could call back in or reconnect, we seem to have lost you. We can move you to the front of public comment as we see you come back on. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience. Elizabeth, I'll let you move to the next one.
Yes, the next one is Ken Joy. Hello, Ken. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and begin to speak.
Enjoy, a resident of the Ventura neighborhood, and therefore more directly affected by the alternatives for Charleston Meadow than those for Churchill. Pre-pandemic, I crossed at Charleston as many as 14 times a week. So I am very familiar with getting there. I typically cross by bicycle. Most of my trips around town are by bicycle, so that definitely biases, I guess you could say, my perspective on things. I think it's fair to say, as many people have noted, that the alternatives you've been discussing are mostly geared towards making motorists move across the tracks. That's understandable, given that more people travel by motor vehicle than on foot or by bicycle. But the comp plan has a policy, T2.4, about complete streets. When you design things, you need to consider all modes of transportation. Because of that, although there are no good alternatives, I think that the deficiencies of the underpass don't meet the comp plan policy T-2.4. I cannot be in favor of that. I think the cost of the trench and the tunnels are prohibitive. I can't say that I'm in favor of those. The problem, of course, then, is that leaves two alternatives, which the first speaker very aptly described as unattractive. I don't know that there's a good answer. To me, the least bad answer is the viaduct. I know that goes against what people have said, no, 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 no. But I urge you to try to figure out which alternative serves the entire community in the best way possible. None of the options are good. I recognize that. And I acknowledge that you are put in a position of having to choose something that will upset people no matter what. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Ken. We have Michael Wessel back with us. So Michael, we are going to go ahead and have you unmute, and you may
Yeah.
go ahead.
Let's see if that works this time. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Great. First of all, thanks to XCAP for all your hard work. I really appreciate it. In its current form, I cannot support the Charleston Meadow underpass option for the following reasons. First, according to an XCAP member in the last Q&A session last Sunday, this solution is only 5% engineered before consultants ran out of steam. Supporting half-baked ideas is a bad idea. Secondly, the plan requires acquisitions using eminent domain. This includes several family homes to accommodate the Charleston roundabout and an apartment complex to accommodate the right turn from Meadow onto northbound Alma. This was swept under the carpet so far. The public construction timeline video does not show any impact on the apartment complex, and the family homes that have to be taken for the roundabout are conveniently blurred out in the 3D renderings. More emphasis is given on the impact on trees and their relocation. This is preposterous. Third, the idea that impacted homeowners will get a fair compensation price is flawed. There is no affordable housing in Palo Alto in a similar price range. These families will effectively be forced out of Palo Alto, and the partially impacted houses will drop immensely in property value. Fourth, according to an XCAP member in last Sunday's Q&A session, the impacted owners should have received a letter from the city. This is not the case. Neither have we nor our neighbors received such a letter, not a single word from the city. Minimally, the city should start a conversation and think about possible plans and potential options for people that will be displaced. Fifth, during construction, the impact to normal traffic patterns will be tremendous, and the city will be divided into east and west of Alma communities. Hence, I support in this order, first the tunnel, then the trench, then the hybrid. I do not understand how the tunnel and trench can result in these enormous cost estimates. I am no civil engineer by any means, but it is inconceivable to me how one little creek can provide such an engineering obstacle. For example, the city of Hamburg in Germany was able to build an entire new subway line in the last 5 years over more than 1 mile, largely underwater and through the harbor terrain for 200 million euros. Our little tunnel or trench should be a fraction of that. The underpass option relies on eminent domain. According to the Daily Post, XCAP recommended Churchill closing because other options would have required claiming eminent domain. Please let us apply the same line of reasoning to the Charleston Meadow underpass. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. We have Lisa Marcacci, and then the following speaker would be John. We're going to go ahead and unmute Lisa. Please go ahead, Lisa. Lisa, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and begin to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks so much, and thanks for all the work that everybody's done on the XCAP committee to get us the renditions and animations. I know there's still work to be done. And we just wanted to, we live on Park Boulevard, and we butt up against the tracks in our backyard. What our preferences would be is first the trench, and probably a distant second would be the underpass, although that would be subject to further study, and our understanding is there might be some reduced property impacts. And in any case, if there are impacts to residents, that there'd be a caveat there for us also to support that would be that they're able to stay in Palo Alto. I don't know how that works out, but it may be greater than fair market value of their property, for example. But I don't know that there's a very close third. We think that the trench, if we view this as a long-term project, and viewing it that way, or generational, across generations, and viewing it that way, we see the trench as the only improvement option over the status quo. I mean, the status quo I know is going to change because of the expected or anticipated increase in ridership. But all the other alternatives have detriments. I think the trench, although there will be some bracing that will come into our backyard, I think otherwise the trench would leave the community intact. It would actually increase a benefit to traffic flows. It would not cause issues for inclines being built for people trying to get different places and under different health conditions, trying to navigate that. It won't redirect traffic. It'll improve safety, and it won't create any other barriers that'll be divisive to the neighborhood and the community. And just in general, I mean, having lived in the sort of the COVID environment and working at home, I've had more opportunity to walk the neighborhoods at night, and just thinking about crossing over Alma now with either a viaduct, raised train, or hybrid, or barriers that would come with lowering or raising tracks. It just is sort of a depressing thought. But I think that's all. And just again, appreciate all the time and effort everybody's put into this and giving us information. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be John, followed by Deborah Jew. John, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Yeah, my name's John Mulder. I live on Whitlam Drive. About a year and a half ago when this project started, I was actually in favor of an underground solution, hoping that something like a tunnel was feasible. Since the engineering studies have come back and shown that it's not feasible within the cost constraints, I've changed my mind. And I was even on one of the earlier petitions to put the railroad tracks underground. After I reviewed the trench and the hybrid options today.
No, I'm okay.
Sorry. After I reviewed the trench and the hybrid options.
Yeah, I'm fine. I can see my.
Excuse me, Phil, you're unmuted.
Phil, you need to mute yourself, please, because you're.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier today, when I was reviewing the trench and the hybrid options, I noticed that there's about 20 feet of no man's land, so to speak, between the new tracks. Either a wall for the hybrid option or a fence for the trench option. There's about 20 feet of space between the existing property lines, fence lines of the neighbors, and this new track that would be put in place. And I wonder to myself what this space is going to turn into if it's not easily accessible from the roads, it's not easily seen, are we going to have strange things happening there? To me, when you raise the tracks on a viaduct, you've got clear lines of sight from Alma Street to the fences of the people who live on the west side of Alma. You have the potential for adding a nice linear park. There's not a giant hole in the ground that you have to worry about, trees falling into or people falling into. What I would request of XCAP, and you guys have done a really great job, having sat through the first hour of this meeting, I can tell that this has been a slog. I would like to know more about the visual impact of this sort of no man's land. What is the plan for it in the case of a trench? What is the plan for it in the case of a hybrid? And in the case of a viaduct, what does landscaping actually look like? I think that would change a lot of people's minds if they saw what this looked like in practice, rather than thinking to themselves about what this looks like in their minds. I guess that's all I have to say on the issue, but just to sum it up, I think tonight, and since the tunnel is not available, I'm in favor of a viaduct. Thank you.
Thank you, John. The next speaker we have is Deborah Jew, followed by Renee Hoffer. Deborah, you may unmute yourself and begin to speak.
Hi, my name is Deborah Jew, and I live in Charleston Meadows. We've been there for 35 years and plan to be there for a long time after. When the issue first came up, our neighborhood had some meetings, and it was very clear, and I think this was expressed early on in the process, that people really didn't want a raised track. And it's been extremely disappointing to me that unelected consultants were able to take that off the table so that it wouldn't be considered by people that are supposed to represent us. I am very unconvinced with the conclusion that the train noise would not be greater by raising the track. I have a two-story home. When I am downstairs on the ground level, I hear the train. When I am upstairs in our bedroom, the train is so much louder because we have largely single-family homes in our neighborhood, and there isn't anything to block the noise from traveling. It is much louder at a higher level. I have seen viaducts in other neighborhoods, in other cities, and I just think they're concrete behemoths. I think they're very, very ugly. And I expect a better solution out of Palo Alto that is a city of ingenuity and of engineers. I think we owe it to our residents to not put something there that they're going to absolutely hate for 50, 100 years into the future. Let's get back to the drawing board. Let's look again at tunnel and trench and see if we can't solve some of these problems. Putting something like this all concrete in a city, in a neighborhood that people are looking for a residential feel with lots of trees and community, is putting an ugly urban solution in a place where it doesn't belong. And believe me, I think it's been well expressed. People really don't want it, really think it's ugly. And I don't think we should have it imposed on us. I don't think it would be imposed. Would you want it imposed in your neighborhood where you'd be looking at it all the time? That's always the question that decision makers should be asking. And I think that would be an easy no. So please don't put a raised viaduct in our neighborhood. We would be extremely, extremely upset about it, and we would have to look at it every day, and we would hate it.
Thank you, Deborah. We will have to move on to our next speaker, Renee Hoffer, followed by Sandeep Ball. Renee, go ahead and unmute yourself. You may begin to speak.
So, my name is May Hofer, and I live on Park Boulevard on the train tracks between Charleston and Meadow. I too, I'll just be direct. I do not want a viaduct at all. I have said this to you at other meetings. I've listened to many of these meetings, although I have not often commented. I think the last time I did was before the COVID. I also don't want a cement wall behind my house at all. We have a great neighborhood, and I have heard, listening to these meetings, that a number of people have not commented from South Palo Alto. So I did a quick survey of my own neighborhood, and I live on the tracks, like I said, between Meadow and Charleston. And I would say 90% of them are all working families with kids. So they are not able to listen to these meetings. And I also agree with Deborah that we made ourselves known early on in this discussion that we were not wanting a viaduct. And that's what I want to say. It's not that people aren't interested in that we haven't been listening. We have. And yeah, we don't want a viaduct. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Our next speaker is going to be Sandeep Bal, followed by Ivy Lee. Sandeep, you may unmute yourself and begin to speak.
Okay, can you hear me, Elizabeth?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
So my name is Sandeep Bal, and like many of my neighbors whom you've heard, my family, we've lived in the Charleston Meadows neighborhood now for 24 years and continue to plan to live there. My kids have grown up, they've enjoyed the safe bike and walking school corridor. They've do Brioni's, Gunn, Fletcher. I appreciate and I really appreciate the work everyone's doing, and I'd like to seriously request you all to consider the below ground options, as many of the neighbors have spoken about. Now, the reason that I think we should really pay a lot of attention to this is because the design we come up with, will be around for 100 years, and high-speed rail is coming as well, and it could tie us to certain limited options. So I think that the option with the least negative impact is below ground option for the track, either the tunnel or trench options. And these options have been successful in many parts of the world. We're Palo Alto, engineering capital of the world. And so we should be able to do these options. And even in San Gabriel, I've seen cases where they've done a very successful trench option. My concern about the elevated option, which you've heard from many of my neighbors, is that it'll be unsightly and noisy. Our neighborhood is mainly single family homes, and we'll have this concrete structure rising way above the trees. The underpass option limits the road connectivity to Alma, and it displaces the neighbors. It looks very nice in the artist rendering with light shining through, but consider that high-speed rail will come, and from 2 tracks it'll grow to 4 tracks, and it'll soon start looking like the Page Mill underpass option. So I also wanted to add that the majority of our neighborhood favored the tunnel option. It was taken off the table by non-elected people, so it should be back in consideration. It gives significant benefits that'll be worth the cost if you account for the reclaimed land above and the connectedness of Palo Alto. The other factor I know that's been discussed is the Caltrain ridership is delayed. And so this gives time for co-planning and cost sharing with future high-speed rail. The cost sharing was not considered when people were saying it's too expensive. So in summary, I'd like to say a below ground option will have many benefits. It'll not be ugly, it'll not cause noise, it'll have the least impact on road traffic, it won't displace neighbors, it'll maintain a safe school corridor, and I'd like you to seriously consider an option to put the tracks below ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. We have our next speaker is Ivy Lee, and I believe our last speaker with a raised hand would be Kay Gandhi. Ivy, we have you go ahead and unmute yourself and please begin to speak. Ivy, we still are unable to hear you.
It's okay now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Sorry about
No problem. Thank you.
I say I really appreciate the city council spend a lot of time to discuss the issue. Couple years, we had so many meetings at Mitchell Park Library. So I'm thinking we are live at Palo Alto, which is Silicon Valley. We have the best engineer on the world. How could we cannot do the tunnel? That is unbelievable. Also, even cannot do the change. Thinking about, we are not a third world country. We are United States. I don't want our generation after 20, 40, 50 years back thinking what our parents did, what our grandparents did. I wish if whoever make this vertical decision, we wish people could their name on the wall. Let their grandchildren remember who did this kind of decision. So I say no vertical, no harbor, no elevator. Tunnel only, please. That's it.
Thank you very much, Ivy. Our last speaker, I believe, is Kay Gandhi. Kay, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and begin to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Khurshid Gandhi. I live on West Meadow. Lived in Palo Alto for, 18, 19 years now. And part of the Charleston Meadows Association, of course. Thank you very much, XCAP, for all the work you've been doing. I've been following along with my neighborhood this project for over 2 years now. And we kind of tend to be repeating ourselves, or at least that's what my neighborhood feels like. So yes, I am hugely in favor of an underground option. Tunnel would be fantastic. We'll settle for the trench. But I don't want to spend time explaining to you why I want the tunnel and the trench. I think my neighbors have spoken very, very eloquently on that. What I would like to talk is what my personal preferences are for an option that we choose. And one of my personal preferences is that there does not need to be any eminent domain taking. We love our neighbors. We want them here. We want to be able to visit them easily. And since we want to be able to visit them easily, I personally have a very strong preference that all our intersections, turning intersections, be accessible by traffic, by cars, by bikes, and by pets, by all means. So I am not in favor of having any intersections not be accessible. We are trying to connect Palo Alto, right? Not disconnect Palo Alto. So no eminent domains. I would prefer to have all the intersections accessible so that it's easy to get from point A to point B by any mode of transportation. And finally, I would love to keep the roads at grade level. All these underpass options, the underpass really scares me. I don't like it at all. Switchbacks, two-way here, one-way there, go from here to there. It just seems like it's too difficult to fit in a good bike ped option with the underpass. And so if there was an option that I was totally voting against, it is the underpass option. The roads at grade level are very, very useful to the bikes and peds. Yes, the younger generation can scramble up grades really easily. I live on Meadow. I see lots of older people walking, wheelchairs, walkers, older people with like lugging along grocery carts. If you're going to mix them up, not the store grocery carts, the little wheelie carts. If you're going to mix up everybody together on like one bike ped thing with a grade, and you have the little kids and the teenagers going really fast and the joggers, it just doesn't seem like a friendly place for them to be able to go easily. And so I would recommend the road stay at grade so it's easy to walk, bike, as well as move around by car. I know you guys are in a hard position. I appreciate all your work. I've also sent you guys an email with more details on what I feel. Thank you again for all your work and for listening.
Thank you so much. I believe we have two new raised hands. First one is Alan Lee, followed by Stephanie Martinson. Alan, go ahead and unmute yourself. Please begin.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for all your work on considering the grade separations in Palo Alto. As a resident of Charleston Meadows, I'd like to speak out against the elevated rail option, the hybrid and the viaduct. The AECOM drawings of the hybrid and viaduct tell us the steel Caltrain electrical poles will sit 45 to 50 feet above the roadway, and the wires will be suspended between them. After seeing the 50 or so top-heavy poles being constructed these past few months, they're not nearly as light as depicted in the AECOM drawings. They're large green steel columns, not light white poles. Whatever the appearance, this infrastructure will tower over the adjacent residences. It'll be 4 times higher than the single-story overlay residences in my neighborhood. Sitting far above the abutting residences, the hybrid viaduct and the Caltrain poles will be visible at great distances. This hasn't been captured in the AECOM renderings, but is now easy to visualize by driving along Alma and imagining a doubling of the height of the existing Caltrain poles. The potential increase in the distance that the train noise will travel is underappreciated. The AECOM noise study tells us that the noise at the first and second row of houses is fairly similar for all 4 options, but what is not quantified in the report is the effect on houses beyond the first 150 feet, the first 2 rows. The report acknowledges that the viaduct and hybrid may create some increased noise level beyond the first row for diesel freight events. Houses beyond the second row, 150 feet, will see increased noise as second row homes to both the east and west receive some acoustical shielding from the first row of homes. In the case of the viaduct hybrid, the shielding isn't there anymore. This increased noise is important. Over the 20th century, noise sensitivity has increased substantially, and it's correlated with a decrease in home prices. So for the people who are suffering from eminent domain objections, I completely sympathize, but they'll be made financially whole, perhaps at even above market rates. I understand that they'll never be made emotionally whole at losing their home, but I'm asking XCAP and Palo Alto government to consider everyone else. By elevating the rail, the aesthetics and the noise will diminish the quality of life for everyone within 1,000 feet of the train. And that's a large number of people, something for which they will never be whole. Like the cities of Boston, New York, and Chicago, I believe we will regret any elevated rail almost immediately. In Boston's case, they built it in 1920 and regretted it immediately. And it came to an agreement that it should be removed in the 1960s. And then they spent another 40 years getting rid of it. It's been a tremendous waste of human effort. And I don't want us to fall for the same price tag appeal of the raised options. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Our next and possibly last speaker is Lottie Price. Lottie, you may unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hi, I live in Charleston Meadows and I'm a frequent biker. I would like to speak in support of the trench option and any other underground options that come back. It's really nice to be able to bike on level ground and not have to go down, and especially not have to get off your bike and walk it down a tunnel and up a tunnel. You can imagine if you were in your car, if you had to get out and walk a block, it's disruptive to your flow. So yeah, I support the trench option, and there are a lot of bikers along Charleston and along Meadow, all those students coming in the morning, I see them. And I think they would be in support of this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lottie. We have a Stephanie Martinson. Stephanie, you please unmute and you may begin to speak.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, my name's Stephanie Martinson. I live on Park Boulevard. I've been here around 20 years. So thank you for the XCAP members for taking the time to do a really thorough job listening to everybody. I really appreciate it. Specifically, other people have already spoke about this, that we have listened and we have spoken out. And I know that we don't always attend every single meeting, but I really want to encourage the members to know that you're going to hear the train actually probably in a few seconds, that our community truly does not want the elevated train, the viaduct. And when we went up and down the street obtaining signatures, the key component that got people to sign was really about the viaduct, having an elevated track or having an elevated train. And so I know other people have spoke very well about the rationale of the sound decibels and how it grows further along when you don't have the medians to protect. And so I definitely want the members to consider not advocating for that. If we have to do the other options, I really do want to support, if it's better designed, the underpass. I understand that we don't want eminent domain, but again, if I'm going to have to choose between the viaduct, which I adamantly don't want because I don't want to separate the community, then I definitely want something that is an alternative method that gets our kids safe and our community safe. And so, and also moving, the trains moving. So the trains and the cars moving. So I hope that the members will consider asking for a better design on the underpass. And I highly want them to consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I believe we have no more raised hands on our list.
Okay, well, we've only got 5 minutes left in our meeting. I did want to thank all of the speakers today for your comments. It's very helpful for us to hear from the community. I feel as chair, I kind of have to defend some of the suggestions that we are an unelected body making decisions. We're not making any decisions. We're simply making recommendations. And on behalf of all of us, I just want to say some of us have spent more than 2 years looking at this, and whatever decisions we come to will not be taken lightly. And we have heard everybody's appeals. We've heard the strong community support for something below ground and nothing elevated. And frankly, the new ideas kind of came from a lot of the public feedback. So I hope that everyone feels like they've been heard and we're still listening. But I did want to make sure that you understand that there isn't anybody on this committee who isn't really feeling the weight of these decisions or recommendations, I should say. And again, this still has to go to council, and then council has to figure out how to get money to go and study these things further. And so while our recommendations will have some carry some weight, it is not the only thing that will have to be considered in this situation. So I just wanted to say that on behalf of XCAP members. I felt like I just want the community to know that it's not easy for us either, but we've stepped up to try to do this job and hear everybody. So with that, I will let everyone go since it's been a really long meeting. Thank you to all the folks doing public comment. Thank you, XCappers, for hanging in there on what is our first nice and sunny day after a month of smoke. It is hard to sit, and at least it was for me, in this office watching the sunset, and it's the only day that we've had sunshine in a while. So I just want to note that for the record as well. And thanks to everybody. We'll see you next week.
Oh, I want to add one thing.
Yeah, Keith, go ahead.
Happy birthday, Nadia.
Oh, thank you. It is my third birthday spending it doing train stuff in a row on this thing. But thank you, Keith. I appreciate it.
Now that you're 21, you can go and get a drink.
Yes, exactly. Socially distanced. Thanks all. Bye.
Well.